We are going to get started in about 5 minutes. We just did online. We're streaming this as well and just posted that we're going to start about 5 minutes.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Taylor Hicks. I'm here from CFSB. I'm our Information Security Officer. I wanted to take a moment on behalf of the bank to welcome all you guys today and to let you guys all know how glad we are that you guys came out to join us. We've got a great day planned out, a lot of great speakers. I think this is, I was talking to Michael earlier, I believe this is our 7th annual IT Matters, and I don't know how many security matters we've had over at the main campus in Murray. But we're always really excited to help plan with Michael throughout the year these events and just to be involved in the planning of that and getting everybody here and providing some great speakers for the community so you guys can come and see everyone. Before I turn it over to Dr. Ramage, I did want to let you guys know when you came in, you might have noticed there's a large truck outside with our logo on the side of it. We're going to have some refreshments out there. We've got drinks. We've got some snacks on the way. I think Do & Co. is providing some snacks for us today. So during the break today, if you guys want, go out there and see Dana. She's manning our Big Cent, is what we call that today. We've got a prize wheel out there too. A lot of great things on the truck today. So go out there, talk to Dana, see what you can win, and get some refreshments during that break. We would love to see you guys out there. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ramage and let him welcome you guys too. Again, we are so glad you guys all came out and joined us today. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you very much. Welcome. I know there's a handful of us that will continue to migrate in, so that's okay. A couple of things I want to point out. I don't think that Taylor shared the most important thing, which is the restrooms. It may not be important until it's important, and then it's important. But the restrooms are out as you look down the hall to the left, and they're easy to find down there. I am excited to have you here. I am excited that we are able to do this yet again. This year we are back in person, as Taylor said, but we are also doing it virtual as well. So if you have a colleague that can't be here today or is not here with you today because somebody has to man the fort, we are streaming this from our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. So if you go to, if you're sending a message to someone, Facebook, it's Murray State Cyber. On YouTube, our channel's Murray State Cyber as well. And you can stream it from either one of those platforms. For those that are watching online, make sure that you're also sharing and commenting and asking questions. We have John in the back that is manning the stream, so as it's appropriate and there's questions, we'll make sure that those questions get asked to our speakers as well, because I think that's an important piece that you can interact as well. Any questions before we get started? Oh yeah, one more thing. Hopefully, as you registered and got your name tag today, you got a blue ticket. We'll give out a few things throughout the day, so make sure that you do that. After the break, when we come back, probably in between speakers, we'll give out some T-shirts and also a couple of other prizes. So make sure you have that. And yes, you have to be present to win. This is to encourage you to make sure you come back after you eat your good cookie dough. Which it is really good cookie dough, so make sure you get some. But let's get started. For 7 years, we've been doing IT Matters. Before that, we did some other events. And those events and now IT Matters, we've always had a sponsor for our events. We've always co-hosted with CFSB, and frankly, if not for co-hosting with CFSB, it would be hard to do these events. But even more importantly, without our sponsors, and in particular without Atnt, it would be hard to do this as well. One of the things that for many of you that you do know, for some of you you may not know, is that all of our sponsorship for this event goes to scholarships. So every year Atnt has sponsored this event, and every year that money has gone to scholarship. And specifically, that money goes to transfer scholarships. So it goes to students who are transferring to Murray State from the community colleges. That's what the money always goes to. And so we are grateful for that relationship over time. But this year is extra special because not only is AT&T our sponsor again, but also the new president of AT&T Kentucky is with us today to share a few words as well. Carlos Sanchez is that president. He has really been in Kentucky now just for a few months. Started in April. He came from North Carolina, where he was in North Carolina for 20 years in different roles with AT&T. Originally from Bogota, Colombia, has a Bachelor's of Arts in International Relations from Florida International University, an MBA from the McCall School of Business in Queens University. He lives in Louisville now. He is getting introduced to the Kentucky culture maybe faster than he wants, the good and the bad. Actually, let me back up. He moved to Louisville in April, so it means you've already got to experience Derby. Yes. So he didn't take him too long to get used to Kentucky. We were just talking before we got started about all the different connections of people we've had in the past, and I am excited to have Carlos in Kentucky. I'm excited for him to share a little bit about what AT&T's been up to, but also some of his passions, which are some passions that we really need in IT space right now. So, Carlos, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you very much for driving down this morning and being with us.
My presentation because we have to head over to Owensboro, but I built enough time because we have to try the barbecue festival here in Paducah. So that's a big tradition here, and I'm coming from North Carolina, a big barbecue state as well, and I'm going to have to judge because we have the vinegar-based barbecue and then sweet barbecue in South Carolina, and I was asking Amanda about the barbecue here, and she said, well, it just depends. It's your own taste. Maybe they have bourbon barbecue. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But I'm excited to be here at Morris State University, Paducah campus, so go Racers. And thank you, Dr. Ramage. As he said, I was named president of Att Kentucky only 5 months ago, and I've been traveling the Commonwealth from east to west, north to south, and everything in between. Like I tell my team and my wife, the more we travel, the more we see it, the more we like it. So this afternoon, I'm joined by Amanda Leach, right over here. Amanda, please wave. She's the regional director for AT&T External Affairs for Western Kentucky. So she covers this area, definitely Paducah. So anything you need from AT&T, reach out to Amanda, reach out to me as well. Very happy to help. And one thing that I wanted to mention, of course, Dr. Ramage asked me to give a little background about myself. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to do that. I'm not too big about speaking about all of my career, but I'll do that for a moment, and then we'll turn over into some AT&T technologies. So how is that as a program? Everybody cool? Great. So I'm a first generation Hispanic American and came to the US at the age of 16 from Colombia, South America. My parents were successful business owners, entrepreneurs in Colombia, but my mother was kidnapped. My grandmother was kidnapped some time ago. I remember all that when I was a child. And my parents made the difficult decision to basically move to the U.S. My grandmother was rescued by Colombian authorities, and she was fine. But it was kind of a tough event to go through. We arrived in South Florida, Miami, and it was a very interesting adjustment for the family. Very quickly, my parents reinvented themselves and ended up working in the television industry we produce a travel program in English at the Travel Channel and then in Spanish at the Telemundo network. And basically, it was a travel program going to see, highlighting different destinations around the world. I worked with that show for about 8 years. I counted the number of countries I visited, 47. So it was quite an experience for me. I went to school in Miami, like Dr. Ramesh mentioned, Florida International University. I was working for the TV show until something tragic happened. My parents were killed in an airplane accident. So all of that was transformative as well. Again, I ended up leaving South Florida, going to New York City, and I basically, with a partner, founded a cable television station, and we were broadcasting the news from South America. It was like a CNN backwards. In other words, bringing the news from South America for the Latin American population in the New York City area. Quite a great opportunity. I was there for about 5 years. Sold the business because you know what they say, if you live in New York City for more than 5 years, you become a New Yorker, and then you become addicted to New York. That's what happens with a lot of people I know who live there, and they just can't leave New York ever. Left, went back to Colombia, as a matter of fact, and then founded a telecommunications company with the same associate, and we basically represented. So this was my first time I actually was introduced to Atnt because we ended up representing Atnt in Colombia for the satellite division. Back then, you will have to have 11-meter dishes, just imagine. 30-foot dishes for satellite. Nowadays, I mean, you have a DirecTV little dish, and you can get thousands of channels. But we used to sell those there. It was a great opportunity, but my heart was in South Florida, so I came back to Miami, and of course, ended up marrying my high school sweetheart, and we had our first 2 kids there, and we wanted another place to raise the family. We ended up moving to North Carolina, and later, of course, Kentucky. Been with the company for 20 years, love working for Atnt, and have done different roles with the company. But like Dr. Ramesh mentioned, I was in North Carolina for 24 years. The last 3 in the Triangle area. I don't know if you're familiar, you folks, with Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area. Some of you know Chapel Hill because of little basketball team they have over there, but I have to be careful about the Blues here in Kentucky. So and then before that, I lived 21 years in Charlotte. So basically, our kids were raised there. So what I say is that I lived in North Carolina for 24 years, all of that preparing me to be in Kentucky. And we love it here. It's been fantastic. Very much enjoy what we're doing. So just to give you a little more background, like many others who have come to the United States, my story, my family's story, is one of reinventing ourselves. And that's so much a part of what I'm doing today, helping educate state policymakers on how our company is continually reinventing itself through the latest technologies to better serve communities and our customers, and to keep them connected to the digital world. And that path has led me here today to learn more about the great work Dr. Ramesh and the staff at Morris State are doing to support the cybersecurity and network management program. And I also learned that you also do some of disaster recovery communications type. We're big on that as well. I'll touch on that in a moment with Firstnet. But this program, Atnt has had the pleasure to support since its inception 15 years ago. So we're pleased to have contributed over $60,000 to this program over that span of time. So let's clap for that figure, so appreciate that. So as the leader in innovation technology, technology is at the core of AT&T and how we serve our customers. As a result, cybersecurity is a business imperative for AT&T. Our global network currently transports more than 500 petabytes each day. You guys, can anyone tell me how big that is? It's petabytes is a lot. I'm trying to see how much is transported, like in the United States each day, but it's a lot. This gives us valuable intelligence about the ever-changing cyber threat landscape. This intelligence, combined with automated threat detection technologies, enables AT&T to safeguard not only the network and our own infrastructure, but also our customers' data as the sheer volume of cyber attacks continues to grow significantly. With more than 500 petabytes of data crossing our network every day, we analyze approximately 686 billion flows that represent about 19 petabytes of data per day. That's how much we analyze each day. And on average, we see more than 90 billion potential vulnerability probes across our global IP network every day. While I'm not the cybersecurity expert at AT&T, we have many that can expand on the topic to a much greater level of detail. And if you're interested, write this down or use your phones, I'm sure, to write this note. There is an opportunity coming up next month where you can learn more about AT&T's technologies. The AT&T Security Conference kicks off on October 4th with speakers from the CIA, IBM, Palo Alto Networks, and many more. We have a post on our Twitter page, which is ATT Policy KY. ATT Policy KY. And it's free, stream. You can basically, maybe you, Dr. Rama, should make that part of the curriculum or somehow make sure the students attend, because it will be a great opportunity to learn about not AT&T but other companies as well. You can sign up for a free virtual registration and take the entire conference if you like. What I can speak to in detail is how AT&T is working to bridge the digital divide. As IT professionals and aspiring IT professionals, safe, secure networks are vital to your work. For over a century, AT&T has connected America to help people live, learn, work, and succeed. In 2022, we remain committed to doing our part to bring connectivity, educational resources, and economic opportunity to the millions of people who need access to affordable broadband. AT&T's core mission of connecting people has stayed the same while technology has greatly evolved. The issue of connectivity and broadband access has become especially paramount in the last few years. Addressing affordability, access, and adoption is at the heart of our commitment to creating connection for all Kentuckians. From 2019 to 2021, so 2019 to 2021, AT&T invested nearly $750 million in our wired and wireless networks in Kentucky, and our investments continue. So we're one of the biggest investors, I guess, in capital-intensive projects in Kentucky. Right now, we offer symmetrical multi-gig speeds of up to 5 gig, so 5 gigabits per second connections. That's what I have at home in Louisville, 5 gigs. And a lot of people ask me, so that's fast? Yeah, well, 5 gigs is super fast. I mean, 5,000 megs. And really, when I connect like my wife's iMac, either to Wi-Fi or directly to Ethernet, is maybe 950 megs up and down, which is super fast. But that's how much a computer can really do, maybe 700 megs. What is good about the 5 gigs is all of the connected devices that you have at home. So pull out your iPhone, and then it's basically running at 700 megs. And then you have 4 or 5 iPhones in the home doing the same. So all of these connected devices to the Wi-Fi, that's where these high speeds are basically very, very attractive. So in other words, the internet we build is not just built for today. Our networks anticipate the speeds needed in the years to come. Now, we realize that speed isn't the only thing that matters, though. Just as critical as speed is access to a network that can handle the growing number of connected devices, like I mentioned, that consumers have inside their homes. The average consumer has 13 connected devices in their home, and that number is only expected to grow. Fiber is the technology that can handle that growth. Our growing fiber footprint nationally now has the ability to serve 17 million customer locations in 100+ metro areas with a goal of reaching 30 million homes by 2025. And I'm going to tell you the number in Kentucky is 300,000 customer locations that we pass with fiber right now. So as one of the largest fiber providers in the nation, we design our network in an integrated fashion to capture all potential growth opportunities, to ensure we maximize the utility of every strand of fiber we lay. To keep pace with this historic expansion, AT&T has partnered with Corning Incorporated, this is really cool, to expand production of optical cable at a facility in Arizona to ensure there are enough materials to meet our 2025 goal. There are many companies right now doing fiber. Of course, AT&T is the largest in the country laying fiber, but there are others. So there is a lot of pressure on the supply of fiber optic cable. And this is why AT&T has partnered with Corning. In addition to materials, highly trained workers are needed because if we are to build great networks, then we need a great workforce. That's why AT&T and Corning have joined forces to create a new training program focused on equipping thousands of technicians and network specialists across the industry with the skills crucial to design, engineer, install, and manage a growing fiber broadband network across the U.S. So that was just signed, and that program is in North Carolina. The fiber optic training program will be led by experts across the industry, housed in Corning facilities in North Carolina, and serve needs across the country. The program includes training on optical fiber and networking, network design, hands-on splicing, and other areas. Upon completion, trainees will be ready to fill needed roles at carriers, construction firms, and broadband providers. Of course, that's all access, okay? So you have to think about three-legged stool. You have access, affordability, and adoption, and that's broadband. Access is one part of it. Most people focus just on access. Oh, we don't have. But okay, we need access. We need, of course, the broadband. But then availability or access is only one part of the broadband equation. Plans that address affordability and adoption are equally important. So as part of our $2 billion commitment from 2021 to 2023 to help bridge the digital divide, AT&T is addressing affordability through the Access from AT&T, a program driving down the cost of home internet for eligible households to the best monthly rate possible, $0. So basically, this is what's going on. We're partnering with the federal program. The federal government has issued a program called the Affordable Connectivity Program, ACP, that provides $30 subsidy for families that are with limited income who have children in Pell Grants or free and reduced lunch, basically, or SNAP EBT cards. So that, if the family is eligible, then they qualify for the $30 a month subsidy. And then AT&T, in turn, we have the $30 a month access, which is 100 megs up and 100 megs down. So basically, when you combine both, our eligibility is exactly the same as the federal government. So when you combine both of those, it's free. And this is where Att fiber is available, of course. We're also focused on barriers to adoption. So then that's access, affordability, now adoption, such as lack of digital literacy skills and access to computers. So, I mean, a lot of families and a lot of populations maybe could be more towards the older population may not have the knowledge or the equipment, I mean, the computers. So through Att Connected Learning, we're investing in projects and organizations that connect students and families to learning resources, economic opportunities, and community support. We're tracking progress to our 2025 goal to provide 1 million people in need with digital resources through Att Connected Learning. And you can Google that up, Att Connected Learning. Through 2021, we engaged more than 72,000 individuals through digital inclusion initiatives, such as collaborations to provide refurbished devices to low-income students and families, resources to support digital learning and literacy, and investments in programs that boost employment opportunities. Now, we also launched the Achievery. The Achievery. Any of you have young like siblings still in like middle school or high school? I mean, raise your hand. You do? Okay. So this is a great free digital learning platforms to make distance learning more entertaining, engaging, and inspiring for K-12 students everywhere they learn, at home, in the community, and in the classroom. The platform aims to engage students in an enriching online training and learning experience and help them make the most of their connectivity, demonstrating the opportunities for learning and economic success that await them. So basically, Att has a partnership with Warner Brothers Discovery, and the Achievery is, let's say, for elementary school children. The lesson plans are with the Warner Brothers characters. So it could be like Spider-Man or Superman or Wonder Woman teaching math or geography or whatever. So it's more entertaining. I mean, that's basically what they see every day. So it's so you can also Google the Achievery. Helping kids also means helping parents. Together with the Public Library Association, we've launched a series of digital literacy courses to help parents and caregivers build skills and confidence using technology so they can better support their child's online learning. So I mentioned earlier our disaster recovery efforts through a division of Att called Firstnet. And there are two Firstnet. So you do firstnet.gov is the federal government program, and firstnet.com is Att. So back when Katrina happened, and then before that, 9/11, there were, of course, major disaster areas, and when first responders from other states came into New York or New Orleans to help, there were issues with communication. So let's say police from neighboring Texas came into Louisiana, and they couldn't communicate with the locals. So people had different phones, different technology, different frequencies, and that was an issue, of course, responding. So the Congress created the 9/11 Commission, and out of the 9/11 Commission, they created Firstnet and the Firstnet Authority, which is the federal agency. Firstnet Authority launched request for proposal, basically a contract competition for carriers to come in and present proposals. Att participated, and we won the national contract to be the first responder network for the entire nation. That was 5 years ago. We've been building the network, and it's a separate network. So today you have Att, you have another company out there that starts with a V, and another one that starts with a T. Well, there is a fourth carrier, which is Firstnet, also another AT&T, basically wireless network that is specifically dedicated to first responders. And so imagine like a highway, imagine a highway, and basically the first responders have the HOV lane dedicated for themselves, so they don't run into any traffic. So anytime they connect, so I mean, you guys have a stadium in Murray, right? So let's say there is some sort of game going on there, and something happens, and then the first responder is trying to communicate. Well, everybody is trying to send pictures and communicating, and you know when you're in a stadium or a big venue like that, sometimes there is a basically a touchdown, and you're trying to send a picture, and then it stays there, you know, a little line, it doesn't go through. Well, that's because maybe 50,000 people are sending the same picture at the same time, so there's congestion in the network. But if you're a first responder and you're trying to send a picture or a message or whatever, I mean, you have a dedicated express line separate from the commercial users. So that's what Firstnet is, and Dr. Ramesh and I just spoke, and maybe if you're interested as students and industry, we can have someone come and present what Firstnet is about. I mean, it's very cool. But I want to say how proud I am of our teams who worked to restore communication services in this community and many others throughout the region in the wake of December's severe weather events. I know Dr. Ramesh lives on the pathway, right? I mean, the tornadoes went through your street. Well, we were able to restore wireless communications within 48 hours. Our networks were up and running that quickly. And that's all because of this Firstnet capability that we have now. So at AT&T, we know that basically no two communities are the same, which is why we're hard at work engaging with and investing in communities across the country to help make broadband more accessible and affordable for all. So that was my presentation. I appreciate your time today, and I mean, I don't know if we have time for questions or not. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. And if I don't know the answer, I can ask Amanda. Right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I had a question for you on your Firstnet stuff there. And I apologize because I stepped out for a bit to take a phone call, but does the Firstnet system use the same cell phone towers as the regular AT&T wireless, or is it?
Yes and no. So yes, it takes advantage of the AT&T towers. And by the way, the business of towers, so a lot of, I mean, many people think that AT&T has their tower, and then Verizon has their tower, and T-Mobile has their tower. And that basically doesn't work like that. Today, there are tower companies that their business is to build a tower and then lease space to the three carriers. You will see, I mean, if you're driving, you see those towers, you're going to see like three sections. So each of those is one of the three carriers. And then you're going to see now a fourth section. So Firstnet is utilizing those towers. But also, Firstnet does their own communications upgrades in police headquarters or areas where there is a lot of first responders activity that is just dedicated to them. Great question. Yeah. Any from the students? And if you're ever interested in yes.
I'm sorry if you covered this, but what differs the Firstnet service from the consumer AT&T service as far as reliability or actually higher service speeds, and maybe what's the differences there, I guess?
Between the AT&T service and the Firstnet service?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay, great question. So Firstnet has a specific spectrum. Basically, every so many years, the FCC puts out a spectrum for auction. And going back, I guess I can connect back to my remarks. So the UHF and all of that, all television technology that was satellite, that was a lot of radio spectrum. All of that has been repurposed. So because you don't use UHF anymore, and you have basically digital TV. That spectrum was put for auction. AT&T bought a lot of that spectrum, and that it is for Firstnet. So it rides in a different spectrum. Yeah.
All right. Well, let me say thank you very much for joining us today. Before I let you leave the stage area, I want to ask if all the Murray State students would come up to the front. I want to take a picture. We've got a check that I want to come up and do I want to brag. I mean, it's more than $60,000 that we've received in scholarship over the time. So I want to do a picture with that.
Before I walk with this. So I think I'm good.
All right. Moving right along. We got a packed agenda. That was just our first speaker. We got a few more speakers coming along. Although I will say, for our next speaker, I don't have to look down to see where his degree is from. At least not his first degree. Demarcus Pruitt is our next speaker. He is currently the technical program manager at Google. He is a Murray State grad. He graduated from our TSM, what's now our CNM program, a few years ago. Out of school, he went to work, did a few things. I think there's a timeline, so I'm not going to go over all of it. But what is true about Demarcus over his career is that he has managed some of the largest networks in the world. He started with Insight, which was a regional cable company who got gobbled up by Time Warner, who got gobbled up by Charter, and now he's at Google. So, two of the largest tech companies in the world, one you just heard from and another you're going to hear from next. Demarcus is based, he's from Louisville, started his career back in Louisville, but has now relocated to Austin, Texas. So he came up to visit with us today, so definitely pay attention. And for the Murray State students, if you, tomorrow morning, you're going to get to hear from him again and be able to ask questions. So tomorrow in the auditorium at 8:30, if you want to come out, if you're a student and haven't seen the message, you're welcome to join us. But with that, Demarcus, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
Test. Good. All right. Yep, thank you once again, Dr. Ramage. As he said, my name is Demarcus Pruitt. I am an alumni of Murray State University, one of the greatest universities in the world. I'm a little biased, but you know, so yeah, it's a privilege and an honor to come back to speak. I remember as a student, some of the alumni coming back and talking. And these are a great opportunity for us to pass on information and to also collaborate with the industry. So Michael gave me a tight timeline. I'm going to try to talk fast. I'm going to try to get through this really quickly. But if you got questions at the very end, we'll talk about it. So the title of this, One Size Fits All. As Dr. Ramage said, I have the opportunity to work on various sizes of networks, from very, initially starting off my career troubleshooting very small networks, from a customer support perspective, home networks, small business networks, all the way until now I'm at Google. So we'll jump into it. These are going to be basic practices that any size network can use, right? These are practices that I've experienced, that I utilize, that I put it in place, and ideally, as me and Dr. Ramage sat down and talked about what are we going to talk about, I wanted to have a topic that could transcend regardless of where you're coming from. All right? So yeah, we're going to talk about network monitoring, incident management, change management, knowledge management, and then finally about automation. Who am I? Dr. Pruitt, but this is my collage of where I've been at and what I've been doing. So on the left up at the top, yeah, University of Louisville. Probably lost half the room now because I'm born and raised in Louisville, go Cards. Alumni of Murray State. Did my bachelor's. I graduated in 2004 in the TSM program. I initially started in the MBA program, but you see that I was part of the Army Reserve at the time. I got deployed, and it's funny now you look back at it as how pretty much every program has an online component. At that particular time, Murray State MBA program wasn't as versatile as it is today, so I switched over to University of Phoenix, where I was in the military and got deployed. But also Sullivan University, which is based in Louisville, I wound up getting my PhD in management and information technology, and part-time as an adjunct professor, I teach at South University in the Austin, Texas campus. Career-wise, as I said, U.S. Army. So I know Mr. Sanchez is gone from Atnt, but in the military, and any of y'all are former military, I was a 25 Lima, which is a network systems installer. I had to go down to Fort Gordon, Georgia, and I got trained on the actual layer 1 physical aspect of cabling, right? Fiber optics, splicing, and stuff like that. So got deployed, like I said, graduated 2004, 2005, got sent over to Iraq. Was over there from 2005 to December of 2006, and it was a really good experience because basically I came over and our job was to commercialize the current infrastructure. The first wave of soldiers came in and pretty much ran everything tactically. Threw all the cables on the ground. We came in and basically tried to make it look like it looks in the U.S. Cables are underground. They're putting in conduits, manholes, type of stuff. So it was a good experience to understand the actual physical aspects of an infrastructure. Doing inside plant, like inside these buildings and stuff, to patch panels and stuff like that, and then like the outside plant, the long haul fiber, running a fiber through conduit, splicing the fibers and stuff like that. So very, very, very good experience. And it was in a very interesting environment. I always tell people, or some of splicers later on. I say, yeah, can you splice fiber with an M16 on your back? You know? So I live in Austin, Texas. Even prior to moving to Texas, I've been a Cowboys fan, so now I lost the other half of the room. So yeah, I'm one of those type of people. Insight, so after the military, after my deployment, came back here December 2006, January 2007, I started a company called Insight Communications. And pretty much for the next 14 years, I worked in the cable industry, telecom industry, and as Dr. Ramage said, change names, you know, that's pretty common in the telecom industry, right? Where acquisitions and mergers happen. So Insight, Time Warner Cable to Charter, and Bright House Network came in and rebranded Spectrum, and then Spectrum Enterprise. So, and then in the middle, that's my greatest accomplishment right there. That's my family, you know. So my wife and I have been married 17 years, been together for 23. We actually dated while I was in Murray State, and got 3 kids: a 17-year-old daughter, 12-year-old son, and a 10-year-old son. So keep us pretty busy. So as I stated initially, so I've had experience on various size networks. So just to give you a quick example, Insight Communication was a regional company. At the height, we had about 1 million subscribers, video, telephony, internet, and that was pretty much, you know, Kentucky, Ohio, Illinois perspective, the network. You know, moving on to Spectrum. So Spectrum is a national company. Now I'm supporting a network that is at one point probably around 24 million subscribers. And then on the Spectrum Enterprise side, the business side, where we had school systems, hospitals. I heard some questions about the cell tower aspect of it. We supported like Atnt, the Verizons, the Sprint, and T-Mobile, providing their connectivity from their towers back to their MSCs and stuff like that. So pretty large footprint. And now for the past year, I've been at Google. It's arguably the world's largest network. It's hard, as Mr. Sanchez was talking about petabit. That's how we look at traffic on the Google side. It's kind of hard to wrap your mind around it, but about 1/3 of all internet traffic in the world goes through Google. Think about it, in the world, 1/3 of internet traffic. So think about your Google searches, YouTube, and the Google Suites, your docs and all that type of stuff, sheets. So this is a pretty robust network and pretty resilient. We got data centers everywhere, and there's multiple complexities to this network from the actual technology perspective and also to the actual governance and policies and procedures aspect of it. So the background, so move along. So this is from the operations perspective. My man King Leonidas, this is operations. So any of the operations people in the industry understands you got to be a special type of individual to be in operations, right? You get no sleep 24/7. Your job is to keep it up. Your job is to make sure that no one knows an outage happens, that they don't even think about the service. They think that the service is always up. So the first topic is network monitoring. So any type of network, and I'm going to give you a high level over each of these topics so we can get really down in the weeds. But at a very minimum, we need network monitoring of some sort, right? So I'm going to look at it from the performance monitoring perspective, and we're also going to look at it from the fault detection perspective. And that's a picture of actually AT&T's GNOC and NOC, Network Operations Center. So from a performance monitoring, it's basically saying how well is your network doing, right? You want to get ahead of it, right? Basically, you want to have some way to see the performance of your network. Example to the right is SolarWinds, pretty common in a lot of organizations, a tool application used to look at the performance of your network. Capacity, availability, latency. So capacity, the network or internet is not going anywhere. It's getting bigger. Everybody is online, Internet of Things, applications are growing. The hunger bandwidth is not going away. It's always going to keep going. So basically, you need to be able to keep your thumb on that, the capacity aspect of it. So as you don't want your capacity to run out, because if you do, you're going to notice issues immediately. Quick story, back in my cable days, capacity-wise on the internet, right? We noticed that whenever it rained, everybody was on the internet. You know what I'm saying? Our capacity would jump up. Friday night, Saturday night, if it rained, we were like, oh no, it's raining. And because everyone would be on the internet because they're stuck in a house or whatever. So we definitely try to plan for that and try to make sure that we were able to move traffic accordingly so that the customers wouldn't have an experience. Because we run out of capacity, you started getting all type of degraded services and stuff. Availability, you definitely want to keep your network up. You want to identify any components in your network that are failing so that, once again, you take it out of the equation before it has an issue. And latency is basically another metric in regards to the performance of your network. Basically, you know, you're rating getting one packet from one destination to the other. And a lot of our applications are based on that. So you'll start seeing some crazy stuff with it. This is probably the bread and butter of monitoring from a network operations perspective. And network management is the fault detection. You know, you need to have some type of fault detection in your network, right? Because that's that 24/7, you know, aspect of it. If something goes bump, you need something to let you know. This is an example of what's up gold, another pretty commonly used network monitoring tool, and there's tons of them, you know, off the shelf, open source. You know, you can write some scripts and stuff like that to monitor your networks. But this is showing an example. You need something out there so that you can basically see the outages or anything that's service impacting. All right. Now, this goes into incident management, right? So, got my man Chuck Norris right here. You know, incident management is putting out fires. And you hear that comment a lot. So the practice of restoring services as quickly as possible. So incident management, which is a very large topic, and sometimes we gloss over it. But, and you can break it up however different ways. From my experience, you pretty much got these 5 basic stages of incident management that you need to develop inside your organization, right? Or inside your network management. And like I said, when you look at the size of your network or your organization, you build it off a scale. You know, sometimes we get really down in the weeds, build out the documentation, but you need to have this put in place. You need to talk about it. You need to have the plan put in place, right? So fault detection. So we just talked about the monitoring aspect of it. So fault detection might come in multiple flavors. So you have your monitoring aspect of it, but you might also need to identify how you get that intake of issues into your particular organization. So it may not just be monitoring. It might be phone calls. It might be from a service desk perspective where you're getting tickets in or something like that. So just make sure you try to identify those different ways of finding out what's going on with your particular network. Impact assessment. So as soon as you get it, you figure out what's wrong, right? You figure out what's being affected, or what is actually down, what is the user experience to your particular network. Then we move on to the communication plan and the resolution support. The communication plan, once you find out what's wrong, you gotta let somebody know, right? So like if we're over at Murray State and the network goes down, one of the buildings go down or something like that, you wanna let people know so that they can act accordingly, right? Then the same thing for the resolution support. You identify what's wrong, then you get the right support mechanism. You might have get a specific subject matter expert to work on it. You know, it could be the actual router or switch, right? You know, you might get a layer 3 IP type of guy, or you might have to get a transport type of person, or you know, in some scenarios, you might have a vendor outside connection, like the Atnt guys over here, right? And we noticed that our network is down due to something they're having going on, so that you know who to engage. So, and then lastly, and that's the part that a lot of times we lack on, because we're fighting fires. I'm tired. I'm done, and the closure aspect of it, which is going to help feed some other stuff later on from a improvement perspective. So how do you close it out? How do you verify that everything's back up? How do you document it? Is there some type of ticketing system or something like that? So you need to make sure you capture the incident. Moving along, so from incident management to change management. So change management, we're going to talk about change management policy, and then we're also going to talk about the proactive maintenance component of it. Because a lot of times your incident may transition over to a change, right, in your network. So a change management policy is basically a policy that standardizes the type of changes you do on your network, or how you do it on your network. And like I said, I've seen change management policies that are like hundreds and hundreds of pages long and stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm just giving you some examples of stuff that you need to have in your change management policy. The whole goal of the policy is to protect the network. So talk about change windows, right? A change window is basically the time that you're allowed to do changes on your network. In the telecom industry, it's normally Monday night, midnight to say 5, 6 in the morning, and that's Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, into Friday morning. That you normally see that, and traditionally don't do anything on the weekend because everybody's off and people's sleep patterns are real sporadic, and you don't want to bring down the services when people are utilizing. I don't know for a fact, but I'm just taking a guess. Everybody knows Chick-fil-A is closed on Sunday. I'd imagine they probably do stuff as soon as they close Saturday night to Sunday, pushing out software, doing network upgrades and stuff like that. But you get the picture. Once again, the impact assessment, you need to do a change. You need to identify what's all being impacted in your particular change. And that's going to feed into that documentation, notification, and approval perspective. So who do you notify? Once again, people need to know about the changes, right? Because if you take something down in an organization, you want to be able to communicate that so people can make plan accordingly. If the network's going to be down, there's no reason to have people in there in the office or whatever that particular night. And then the approval process. So basically, you get everybody who's impacted potentially, get in there and approve it. Everybody give the head nods, the check off, or whatever you need to do to go for it. All right, next is proactive maintenance. Do this in this section, and it can be arguing that it can go in a different section, but we're just talking about proactive maintenance. And once again, this is just another way to keep your network up and running effectively and efficiently, right? Just think of it like a car, right? We get oil changes, right? Every 3,000 miles, every 3 months. Why? Because it allows our car to keep running. You might get your transmission service every 100,000 miles or something like that, right? Same principle. I've been in some situations where if we had did some of this, we wouldn't have had an issue. I had an issue before where on the network, a lot of times, especially on the transport network, you have redundant links and paths and stuff, and you have the ability to switch paths and stuff. And sometimes it never switches a path until something happens. And, I had a situation where the link was up for about 5 years, and a change happened 2 years before, and some parameters in the actual routing got changed. So when we had it hit, it basically black holed all the traffic, and now everybody is down. If we had did, say, periodic failovers every 3 months, every 6 months or something like that, we would have caught it in a controlled environment, like in a maintenance window, and then be able to address it so that our users wouldn't experience the issue. Same thing with software versioning, patches, firmware. The vendors of the specific equipment you have, they are normally put out patches and stuff, and you need to keep them updated. Not necessarily saying that you need to run the latest code out there, but you need to basically not be on the end of the life code, right? So keep track of it. There's different softwares out there that allow you to manage your network and see which device may not be in compliance and stuff like that. So, and then also the proactive part replacement, kind of like I was talking about earlier in regards to availability. So you might have devices, parts, any type of component, right? Basically having failures, and we want to try to identify those and take them out before they actually become a fire. All right, next we're talking about knowledge management. I don't know if anybody knows that picture right there. Me and my wife like Game of Thrones. So that's Sam in Old Town at the Great Library, right? So in Game of Thrones, that's pretty much their Google, right? So where all the information is. So knowledge management is power in your organization. So you're going to talk about the inventory management, documentation management, and training. So inventory management is critical for your network. And even if your network is very small, you're like, I'm back in my head, I got the information where this particular device is and stuff like that. Okay, but definitely for the leadership and stuff like that, you want to make sure that you have it documented in case that individual leaves the organization or something like that, so you know where it is. And also, it helps with downtime, right? So when I say device database, you can use various terms in regards to your supply chain or CMDB, configuration management database, whatever, right? Basically, this is where your device, what type of devices you have in the network, model numbers, their firmware they're running on, the location of the device, if you have spares and stuff like that. So at Google, it is amazing because, once again, the scale, right? Global company, we pretty much have our own, in essence, inside internal Amazon. You know what I'm saying? Like, literally, parts go down. It is, like, amazing, the process and the applications we have put in place where if something goes down, it'll tell you, it's like, this part is here, in here, and the likelihood of it getting there in 4 hours is X, getting the part there, getting into a tech, and all that type of stuff. So very essential to have that for your network. This is another application from Cisco Crosswork infrastructure application, and it's showing your topology, showing your links and stuff in there. And I apologize, it's kind of blurry on here, but you can see the addresses, IP addresses. You can actually see the latitude and longitude, and a lot of times organizations will actually track that because you might put the address, but you want to know exactly where it is if you need to get to that device. Same thing about the physical connections. If I'm messing with Atnt, I want to make sure I have my physical connections to them documented properly so that when I'm talking to them, I can give them exactly the information they need to go troubleshoot my connection or something like that. Next is the documentation management aspect of it. And in essence, basically, make sure you have a plan for your documents, right? Because a lot of times we make documents and information about our network, and it's everywhere. It's literally winds up becoming a mess, and it's hard to find information when you need to. So just some things to think about. Some stuff that might go into your documentation, like vendor information, contact information, process and procedures. And I threw up our, you got Office 365 or Google Drive, use SharePoint before, Wiki, spreadsheet, whatever you need to do, right? It can have some way to manage your documentation. In the middle of that is the documentation review, which I highly recommend. And I know sometimes from a priority perspective it falls low, but you need to put something in place to go back and look at that documentation on some type of interval. If it's a year, 6 months, or something like that, because sometimes the documentation will get outdated. And now, once again, when it's time to break the glass, when the fire happens, and your fire extinguisher is out of fuel. So, next is training. That's what everybody, y'all like that type of training, right? That's what they're doing, these companies and stuff. Y'all be ready. Y'all be ready, students. As my man Rocky training in the snow to fight Ivan Drago and Rocky IV. So this is the other aspect of it. You know, we talked about the technology, the processes and stuff, but we always got to make sure we also talk about the people, the resources who actually do it. Same thing, like y'all going to school, we do training, we're doing conferences like this. You always want to make sure that we think about our training, because new hire training, our internal training, because you want to basically make sure that your people are ready to fight, right? Like Rocky, ready to go. When it's time to happen, it's time to go. You know how to troubleshoot what you need to troubleshoot. You know how to identify the situation. And the better you are at it, the faster it is that we can restore our network. And also, it's good, right? The other aspect of it is the personal development and the career progression perspective for you. So you can make a pipeline into the organization. You know, people troubleshoot something and they may move on to something else within inside the organization, which will make your whole organization stronger. The knowledge never leaves. It's still there, right? So, all right. Now, lastly, so we're putting all this together, right? That's why I said all the documentation, the closure aspects of it, you know, is automation. And sometimes, especially the mom and pop type of organizations may get a little, I don't have the funds and stuff like that to, the resources to do the automations. I can remember early on in my career, I mean, we had like screen capture, you know, screen recording, where you're mimicking your mouse movements and stuff. And literally, if you're doing the exact same movement over and over and over again, why not automate it? And that's the future, right? Because as we see, the networks are continuing to grow. The people, you know, we don't have enough people to support it. We don't have enough people in school to be out there, right? So eventually, automation is basically the great force multiplier, right? It allows us to do more with less. And so that's what I say, monitoring, knowledge management, incident management, and automation. So I say if you're doing something over and over and again, it's good. And like I said, the next level is artificial intelligence. Yes, we're shaking hands with the robot. It's the end of the world, Skynet type of stuff. But artificial intelligence is the next wave, right? So basically, it takes all that data, all that information, and allows us to make decisions, business decisions. It learns and stuff and does some stuff, allow us to do some stuff proactively. Inside the Google world, the automation that we have put in place is probably second to none. I mean, it literally, something happens in the network, it does the analysis, it does the troubleshooting, it does the escalation aspect, it does notification to everybody. It may even resolve the situation. It does traffic shifting, stuff like that. And then also analyze the impact on the business in regards to like how much redundancy do we have in the area? Do we even need to jump on this as early? Let's make it a lower priority because we don't want to spend that much forcing a tech to go out there just to bring up, say, 100 gig, you know. So, but in a nutshell, like I said, that's those 5 basic aspects of network management. And I'm gonna open up for questions. And I covered a lot of information, but.
All right, I have a couple questions that came in from the live stream. Where and you probably know this. If not, I have a pretty good idea on this. This is a question that you might get tomorrow as well.
Okay.
Where's the closest place to here to get a job at Google?
The closest place to get a job at Google would be probably.
Well, let me maybe answer it for you. I think Google just opened a data center last couple of years in Clarksville.
Yeah, I would say Clarksville. Yeah, you're right. Clarksville, we do have a data center there. And I'm thinking of different offices because we do have offices all over. But at the same time, Google does offer remote work a lot. So pretty much I can say where you're at right now is the closest place, right? So, but ideally, Google would prefer you to work close to one of our facilities, our data centers, or one of our office spaces.
So I have a question for you. On the working at, one of the largest companies in the world, does it feel like it's that large on a daily basis?
That is a great question. And sometimes it does from getting something done, right? for example, I used to use the analogy when I was at Spectrum. Getting something changed, like literally takes 2 seconds to type it into the actual, device or whatever. But we had to go through all the paperwork and litigations to change it. I used to say it's like moving the Titanic, turning the Titanic. At Google, it's like moving a fleet of Titanics, right? And so it's like sometimes it's that. But from the day-to-day activities, like I was saying with the automation put in place and stuff like that, it makes it feel small because we're able to do a lot with a small number of people per se, in retrospect to some of the other networks.
How large is the team that you work with?
Yeah, so the global network operations team is, so we have what we call our high-level engineers, and we have 45 of them, 15 in Denver, Colorado, 15 in Dublin, and got 15 in Bangalore, India. But another thing about Google is that they also use what we call contractors, TVCs, and we do have like what we would call a tier 1 type of NOC that has probably about 50, 60 people in it that does some basic troubleshooting and stuff. So, but like once again, the networking team, there are different aspects of it, and there's like teams for every little specific thing. But yeah, thank you.
You get the honor of having the last one, the last word.
So what is your response to the Lambda incident?
The Lambda incident?
The Lambda AI.
Oh, no comment. no, he's talking about basically, you're talking about the AI where basically it became self-aware? Yeah, so, yeah. Yeah, well, my official response is it didn't come self-aware. Yeah, so.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And, that it's always interesting to hear perspective of, you think that it's a great big company, they've got a whole different set of issues, which you do, but when it comes down to it, managing the network, whether it's the largest network in the world or it's one of our small networks, same principles apply. But thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Give him a hand.
Thank you.
I saw him take off out the door. All right, our next speaker is one that many of us know. Many has attended many of these events himself and spoken at a few as well. Brandon is a Murray State grad as well. I always like introducing speakers when I get to say they're a Murray State TSM grad or CNM grad. I certainly like that. Spent several years with DevSource in Murray and moved over a couple of years ago to Industrial Training Services. And when Brandon moved over, he started getting into the DevOps space. And it's one that some of us in the room are probably in, but not as many as will be if we ask the question in 5 years. So I thought it would be really interesting to hear from his perspective of being a network manager, being a network administrator, CTO for DevSource, and then making a shift and really thinking about DevOps and what that means and how he, in many ways, retrained himself into a new space, because it is something that, whether it's our local IT companies or global IT companies, it is continuing to be asked more and more of our students, and I would guess of you as professionals as well. But maybe the most interesting thing, and the thing about Brandon that I'm the most jealous of, is every picture that he posts on Facebook with him in a plane, I just get jealous of. He likes to fly a lot. Maybe doesn't fly as much as he wants, but still gets to fly quite a bit. And so I think that's pretty cool. But with that, Brandon, I'll turn it over to you.
Dr. Ramage. So everything you said was true. Gravity always keeping us down on the flying thing. But wanted to talk today a little bit about introduction to DevOps. Very timely order since operations was covered so greatly. So that'll give us a little bit of a chance to maybe put some contrast in there. And the idea today is that, you know, while DevOps is not a brand new thing, a lot of people, it is a new concept too. It may be something depending on where you are in your career path. You know, maybe you're a student and you're looking, you know, at different avenues in IT career on what you might want to do. Maybe you're already in a career. Maybe you're at a place that some of these principles could come into play and help with your operations, you know, in a place you currently are. As Dr. Ramage said, I came from the MSP world. Spent about 14 years there growing in MSP. Oddly, we were primarily a software development company at the time, and I didn't know anything about that world really. So we started shifting over into helping people with their networks and eventually adopting the MSP, managed service provider space, and then, of course, as everything involves security and so on. So a lot of what happens in the operations world, especially in MSP, is there's a lot of incentive to, you know, put performance metrics and things around just busyness of a technician. And it's something I've always kind of had odds with, because it's one of those things where it's like, what are we trying to drive from our engineering teams? You know, is the objective really to be busy? You know, the entire premise of information technology and information systems is automation. And oftentimes what we see happen is we look at folks that are writing stuff on paper and like, oh, why don't you use a spreadsheet? Or maybe that spreadsheet has evolved to a point where it's like, well, why is this not a database or an app? Or why are you doing these processes manually? Maybe we could use an API and pull that in. And all of these things happen oftentimes from a business operations standpoint, but often we get into this scenario of it's the cobbler's kids have no shoes mentality, right? We've automated everybody else's stuff, but we're still doing all of our stuff manually, right? So one of the DevOps principles, and I hope I'm using this right, I don't use these too often, and there's a laser, so I got to use that. But anyway, this is just one view of DevOps. So this is 7 principles: collaboration, database decision-making, customer-centric decision-making, constant improvement, responsibility throughout the lifecycle, automation, failure as learning opportunity, in case you can't see those. And a lot of what we look at in DevOps is we're looking at automations of application deployment and working with application teams to put out product and maintain, which is primarily what we do. But there's a ton of room, and the reason I want to say this is because we're in West Kentucky, so we have a lot of small networks. We have a lot of repeated infrastructure. We have a lot of opportunities to leverage a lot of these principles in operations, whereas not everybody has custom software where it makes sense. So I kind of wanted to put that out there. You know, collaboration, it's pretty simple, right? So what we saw a lot of in the past was you saw development teams operating as a unit, operations teams operating as a unit, and very little collaboration between the two. And of course, this is in the context of an application, which our company has, Industrial Training Services. So what you would see is you would see developers doing just a ton of work. And you'd see these long life cycles. You would see, you know, oh, well, we're going to have these 150 changes going out at the next time we do a release. That release might be next quarter. Here's all the features and changes, release notes out. It works on our stuff, operations, make it work on yours. So operations would take all of this code, all of this solution, try to package it up in a way to put into their little silo, figure out all the nuance of what was going on. Oh, we're going to need these configuration changes here and so on to make this work. This will kind of secure it. And then at some point, publish that to the world. At that point, what would happen is if a client had issues with the software, maybe a ticket goes in, it goes back to the operations department. The operations department does their forensics on it and all the things, trying to figure out what made the application break. And it may or may not result in a code change. Well, if it resulted in a code change, then that goes to the development team. The development team does their engineering. Okay, we'll get that out in another quarter, so on and so forth. And you can see how even a minor change might turn into a very long release cycle. In addition to the fact that, okay, well now I've got this pile of features and changes and such that folks that are using your software might have to train through and all that stuff. Does that make sense, the complexity of that? I see some nods, so that's good. All right, so just a quick, DevOps is an attempt to eliminate that. So whereas those teams were operating in separate silos, in a DevOps practice, we work closely together. Each individual components, and in our case, for example, we'll have developers helping build deployment templates and understanding components of the infrastructure, whereas DevOps folks also helping with those, the infrastructure, security, and so on, and then helping the developers through that side of the house. So information sharing, shared feedback, again, going back to the sample where some client calls and has some problem, that stuff instantly goes back into this cohesive unit that owns the solution and all of a sudden can make changes to it. The database decision making, key performance indicators, something that people use in all aspects of business. In IT, for example, one of the prime examples I mentioned a minute ago, oftentimes what we see on help desk type situations, and even in MSP sometimes, is technician utilization. So the benefit of a technician is to stay busy, right? Creates a little bit of an issue, whereas tasks may or may not always be handled in the most efficient way, right? Because what incentive do I have to automate? Because in that context, in that way of thinking, oftentimes what you're doing is you're eliminating your position. Whereas we should be looking at it as, okay, well, what can we do next? What enhancements can we make, and so on. So in DevOps, we look more into things like actually delivering code. How many tickets were we able to close in terms of features we added? How many releases were we able to do? How much more were we able to actually put out and deliver to the customer? Uptime measurements, again, that falls into kind of the operations situation, but obviously uptime is a big deal. It's a collaborative effort there because it requires people in operations and development to establish that. Average resolution time, this is a great one because going back to that bug example, what we do now is through automation and DevOps practices, we're actually able to release code oftentimes during the day with complete transparency to the client through automation. So some of these things can be like a single line of code change, right? You put it into the pipeline, which we'll talk about in a minute. It executes, deploys, and all of these things happen to prevent downtime during that. And then uptime targets is just the, inverse of uptime measurement. Customer-centric decision-making. So anytime you shorten the life cycle between software development and deployment, it gives you just an instant ability to make small changes and to really be in tune with customer or client feedback. So whereas what happens or would happen a lot of times is by the time this, say a ticket comes in, we want to do a change, that change is approved, it goes through some like quarterly release or some period of time, people have already forgotten what it was that they wanted changed, much less being able to downstream communicate that to the folks at their office perhaps that's using your software. So this rapid development gives you the opportunity to actually put that customer feedback into a loop that's tight and that can quickly be handled. Proactive monitoring, like was just discussed on the operations side of the house, I mean, that's huge. Putting systems into place that can identify trends in things like storage, bandwidth, capacity, and even automating things in such a way that we can spool up more resources, at an instant where there is demand. And then, of course, as all the business operation folks are going to want, monitoring the price of all this, right? So we don't have a runaway billing situation. Just a tidbit on that. In our situation, we're an AWS customer, so we use public cloud. Just a quick tidbit there. Public cloud infrastructure often is billed per use. So you can spool up massive resources in a pretty short amount of time and generate a pretty significant bill if you're not careful. But tons of benefit there too. Software usage and analysis. Again, that just kind of goes into the performance of the product. Trying to find out when people are using it, when we might have windows to do certain maintenance that are more intrusive. Even as far as what sections of the screen people focus on. Were there navigation issues with this app that maybe since we changed it, it's not working as well. And also using like feature selection software so that you can deliver some of that to, say, one client and not to another, depending on their preferences and such. Just a lot of opportunity for customization there, even in the public environment. And then again, the primary DevOps thing, quick cycle updates to resolve pain points. We can almost at a given moment, once a bug or something has been identified, get the code changed, go through our testing environments, send it out, and go on our way, which, clients love that kind of thing, of course. Constant improvement, another principle. I've probably covered this already, but the point is that you're not packaging these big overarching changes into these deliverable packages, and being able to close that cycle and that loop in such a way that changes might go out 5 times a month puts you in an entirely different position. I don't know if, I was trying to think of a good analogy of this earlier, and there's probably an number to choose from, but let's just say, you're contemplating a trip somewhere, and you get almost there and like, okay, you took a wrong turn somewhere, and you're like, okay, let me replay this whole trip through my mind. It's an hour long, there's 50 turns, all this stuff. The complexity of that is enormous. It's so difficult to remember, okay, where was that change, what caused here, and all this stuff. But if you establish a mindset and a principle to granularize your changes, then all of a sudden you've got these little bitty steps to go back, and it becomes tremendously easier to unwind those things, or just make a change and put those back out. Is that making sense to anyone, everyone? Just the concept of granular small changes? Okay, I saw a couple nods, so that's good. Long development cycles, again, we kind of covered that. The human mind is finite. These systems can get complicated. If you start trying to make these tremendous long roads, that creates some problems. Responsibility throughout the life cycle. This is kind of a concept that's been in engineering for a long time, this whole cradle to grave thing. The idea being, if I design a bridge and 6 years down the road it collapses, I've got a problem on my hands, okay? In software development and stuff like that, there has been an issue in these siloed approaches historically where it's like, well, no, that's the database guy's problem. And then, oh, well, the database guy does his analysis. And, oh, no, it's got to be code. And then the developers run through their thing. And they're like, no, it's the operations guys have this messed up. And this just, cycle of people that are well-intentioned, but obviously, a lot of times they don't have the visibility into the other components to make an assessment. So they run out, and they're like, well, it's got to be this because our stuff looks good. Combining the teams and resources to cover all aspects of the software development, deployment, and service aspect eliminates a lot of that. You know, whereas in the old ways, you might submit a ticket, that ticket's in a queue. You know, by the time those folks get to those tickets, it's not exactly fresh anymore. And that whole system of bouncing around from team to team, creating those delays is just, it's tremendous what happens when you get all these folks talking together in a tight-knit environment where they really start to understand the tasks of the other folks or the other areas of responsibility and really just understand the application better, right? Because you're not locked out of that information. We've talked about the separation of operations and development quite a bit. Automation, I mean, this is tremendous. There's so many benefits to automation outside of just what people look as, or often look as, the raw time savings. Because it's so easy to look at automation and think, okay, well, that's going to take me like 5 hours to figure out, and you know, it's probably going to take me 15 minutes just to do the task. But when you adopt that mentality, you learn. And when you learn, you grow. And when you grow, you do things differently. And in addition, there's often an audit trail of this automation that ran. So whereas, you know, Bob, Susie, or whoever was working at this help desk level and continually running these tasks over and over again, if we can move that to an automated layer and just eliminate that from their day altogether, it also eliminates the mistakes from improper training or misunderstanding or just configuration changes or just even the idea of not having to call this person and say, did you run this thing? Because something changed here and all this stuff. You can just go to the automation. You can see what happened. Ideally, you've got logs to show you what exactly happened. And then depending upon how far you take the automation, you probably have the documentation built in as to what the whole infrastructure was supposed to look like to begin with, which is tremendous. Another thing, too, with automation is a lot of times people compartmentalize that into administrative tasks, okay? So one of the beauties of DevOps is looking at deployment and infrastructure as code, which what that does for you more or less is that gives you an entire roadmap to what all your infrastructure is going to look like. So once you've put that into play, you know every little tidbit of configuration. You know when it was spooled up. You know what you're supposed to go back to. And if you need to make changes, they're usually just 1 line, 2 line, 3 line changes that you can come in and clean that up. And if you had to blow the whole thing away and build it again, you've got the scripts to do it. You don't have to go back and remember every little configuration point. One thing I was thinking of when I was sitting here, I wish I would have done a little bit of math on the possible configuration changes of a basic web app now. And it would have been completely bogus math. However, there would have been enough things to identify that you probably would come up with millions of combinations of just settings and log paths and configuration items and permissions and all the things that go into that. And when you really start to think about the level of documentation it would take to reproduce all of that, it's pretty overwhelming. But again, if it's deployed in an automated way, using infrastructure as code, for example, then all of that stuff is just sitting there ready to kick off again. Another idea with automation too is, you know, going back to the example we were talking about a bit ago of automating people's operations in business in and of itself. It's not, we're in no danger of losing IT jobs. There are n number of tasks, and if you open the security cam, you can find anything and everything you want. But it allows people to focus on higher order tasks. You know, things that are getting left that are not being cleaned up, things that we're getting billed for that was just hanging out, or things that were vulnerable, things that weren't being patched, you know, enhancements that could be made, you know, oh, we're not getting instrumentation on this particular thing. Now I can do that because I'm not having to come back and repeat all these tasks. And there's a tremendous business case to be made there. Failure is a learning opportunity. Anybody in here like to fail? 0? Wow, that's, wait, I think I saw a hand. Good on you. Or maybe you were waving at somebody. But at any rate, failure is where the learning happens. You know, it's rare that anybody succeeds at something and goes, well, this, you know, you hit a hole-in-one golf. I don't play golf. I hear it's a big deal. I don't know. Did you learn anything? Right? Like, you're not going to change your club because you get a hole-in-one. You're not going to change your stroke, whatever else. It's the same stuff in all aspects of life. Failure is where you learn, and failures are a tremendous benefit. Now, here's the deal. As a general practice, minimize your failures, right? I mean, I wasn't going to talk about airplanes, but since Dr. Ramage brought it up. If you're going to fail in an airplane, have a parachute, right? I mean, you want failures that you can undo and that you can recover from. And again, one of the DevOps principles of these small granular changes is it puts you in a position to where you can learn from the failures and they're not these catastrophic things, right? Feedback, of course, is critical in improvement. I mean, that's kind of saying the same thing again. Understanding the risk. You got to be careful having conversations with people when you tell them that failure is a benefit, because, I mean, you know, you don't want gasoline on a fire, right? And you don't want to add failure to failure. And you want to hopefully compartmentalize your failures so that they're learning opportunities and not catastrophe. The shift left mentality. This is shifting more and more things towards the beginning of the software development process. What we want to do with shift left is we want to start to identify problems earlier in the development cycle. If you wait until it's at production and you know, with your clients, yeah, it's not ideal, right? I mean, you can learn from that, but ideally you start to put things in place earlier and earlier in the development cycle to identify problems, you know, with code or infrastructure, security, et cetera. Get those tickets in and then fix those in a lower environment before they start to go up. So these are all principles and methodologies that, I mean, frankly, I think they can apply anywhere in life, but are specific, I guess, to the DevOps practice. So it's really tempting in a tech group to talk about technology and applications and software and so on, but this is why I didn't do this. So I love this because it shows the basically the DevOps flow as to how things work in terms of, you know, you start down here on planning, right? I mean, you could start on building, but the point of the matter is it's cyclical. This shows different tool sets that are employed in different areas of DevOps. So down here in the build process, I mean, you can choose from any of these. You could start with any of them, have experience in any of them, and so on and so forth. And I'm not going to keep talking about that because I think I've made the point. But I'm hoping that this PowerPoint, by the way, is available because there's some links and stuff coming up. But I thought this was really good because it really helps understand in the soup of tools that are DevOps and IT automation where things fit. And at least for me, being a visual person, it really kind of helped me like go, you know, at least. So, I mean, effectively what you would do is you would pick one or two, right, out of each unit, ideally. And since the core of the purpose of this was to talk about how to get into DevOps, this can be used to start looking at some of these specific tools, you know, depending upon where you are career-wise. I'll give you a prime example. I mean, if you're looking at an operations career, you know, you probably don't need to start looking in the building side of things necessarily, but at any rate, it's a good set of tools and vendors that participate. So one of the things, too, that I think is often missing, at least in the pure operations side of the house, is we often miss out on development tools because we just don't operate that way. Is anybody in here a software developer, by the way? Is everybody in here either in school for, say, like IT operations and things of that nature? Is that what everybody's mostly doing here? I don't see any development folks. At any rate, using some of these tools, and a lot of these have free versions if you want to experiment on your own, to do things like writing PowerShell scripts. Like VS Code's been pretty tremendous. You can write PowerShell scripts, Bash, Python, pretty much anything you want to. There's plugins for all of it. If you want to go so far as C#, etc., it will do your Git. So if you use source control, it'll connect with those. It'll connect with AWS services, Google Cloud. The whole, it's hard to talk about because there's a plugin for almost everything. I would encourage people to start looking at some of that stuff. I was in the habit with PowerShell of using the built-in Windows ISE, the integrated scripting environment. That's going away. This is a great replacement for it. There's a community version of Visual Studio for personal projects. PyCharm is another one. I honestly don't do any Python, but I have downloaded it and looked at it just a little bit. It's another one that has a free version if you want to play with it. And these are great tools to start to get your head around if you're looking into DevOps or any kind of automation platforms. And the beauty of them being free is they're free. So over on this side of the house, source control, Git is kind of the predominant standard for source control. A lot of people that write scripts and stuff don't use source control, but the nicety here is you can get line-by-line changes of history for your scripts or code or whatever you want to write. You could put a Word document in there if you so desired. But learning how source control tools work is pretty tremendous. It'll put you ahead of the game a little bit when you start to work with a dev team, if you do that. And if you don't, I've used Git repositories and scripts and stuff in an automated fashion to do stuff like install MSI packages. There's no reason you can't do that. It's tremendously powerful. GitHub has free, you can have a free account for single users. So that is a storage solution for Git, effectively. Other development tools, we talked about using the IDE. I think I duplicated that slide, to be honest. Programming languages, there's some that you can start to get familiar with. Really and truly, like for myself, I'm not a programmer. I never have been. I write scripts and stuff. I love automation, but I just never have gotten to the software dev side of the house for that. But it's just kind of nice to know what's out there, know what the languages look like. You can glean a lot without knowing how to write it, to be honest. And it's just good to know what some of these are. And there's a lot of open source packages that you can practice deployment on the operations side of the house, so you don't have to know how to write code, but you can take something that somebody's written that you know works and exercise some of your learning on the deployment side and the administrative side of the house just to see something do something, right? Scripting languages, Python's huge, PowerShell, of course, Bash, even command line is still a thing. In fact, some of the AWS command line tools are a little easier to use than the PowerShell, but you can wrap those in PowerShell and kind of get the best of both worlds. Infrastructure as code. I'm trying to kind of blast through these because we were trying to leave time for some questions, but YAML and JSON are big now. Basically, I would just get familiar with them. You can write the most basic YAML to do some real, true automation tasks using the AWS API, for example. Spin up a server in the free tier, load your package of some PHP project that you had. You could practice deploying that stuff, and you can do all that stuff for free inside the free tier, which I'm going to have on a couple slides here. Also, just platforms such as Terraform, AWS CloudFormation, which is to automate building in infrastructure. The two competing standards for that, if you're a Microsoft person, Azure Resource Manager or Google Cloud Deployment Manager. CI/CD pipelines is another big one. This one really wrecked me when somebody first started asking me, "Are you familiar with CI/CD pipelines?" I said, "No." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's this new tech that's going to just really rock my world. What am I going to do in life?" It's just running scripts, okay? So you get down and you're automating building the code and deploying things and stuff like that, but they could be so simple as, I want to take this PowerShell script, pull it out of my Git, execute it against this AWS API to do something, and then go on my way. It can be that simple. But there's some free resources out there to try. AWS Code Pipeline has a free tier, Azure DevOps, GitHub Actions. And if any of these are not free, forgive me, but I tried to do my research, but things change. And some of them too, Google specifically didn't have a free one, but they would offer you like a 1-year $300 credit. So it's free, but it's not free. So stuff there you can leverage. What can you do? Covered some of this, but you can experiment with the free tiers at the 3 major public cloud providers. That's a tremendous benefit. I know AWS, you can run a pretty long workload if you choose something that's small. And that can be huge because, again, you can practice spinning this thing up, spinning it down, deploying new code, all of the things that go into DevOps. That if you can go into an interview saying that is huge. Writing scripts, challenge yourself, even if it's at the most basic level. If I have to move a file from this folder to this folder, why not use that opportunity to write a script? Why not take it to the next level? Let's pretend the folder doesn't exist. How am I going to check against that? How am I going to create it? Start to get into the mentality of doing tasks in an automated way. I like to jokingly say, but not, make the machines do the work. I don't want to do work, right? I have to do work. But I'm just saying, work towards eliminating whatever tasks you have to do manually on a day-to-day basis, and you've built tremendous business value in yourself and real tangible reasons to actually do the automation. Employing free tools, some of the stuff we talked about on the previous slides. YouTube is no joke. There are some tremendous trainers on YouTube for free, or you can throw money at them if you so desire. I'm sure they'll accept it most of the time. Reddit, Pluralsight's a pay deal, of course. There's a lot of Slack groups around various IT practices that are pretty significant, and a lot of vendors now have these as well. So anytime we pick a new vendor or start working with a new vendor, I immediately look for their YouTube channel to subscribe. I look for a Slack community. I look for a subreddit, and usually that gets you in a spot where now I've got somebody I can interact with. I've got information I'm being fed, and overall just, using the community and some of these tools just to, find what you can find. And Slack particularly has been great. There's been many times I've been able to just search in Slack and find specifically what I was having trouble with. And it may not be stuff that's even in their documentation, but a support person has contributed and talked or spoke. That's terrible grammatical use, but at any rate, has contributed in such a way that you wouldn't have access to in any other way. I mean, you're more or less getting insight into other people's tickets, and it's huge. Again, automating tasks. I mean, I know it's scary. Put in your credit card in AWS. They're pretty sound. Use the free tier. Just be mindful of what you're doing, and try a couple things with their API. Just being super mindful of what's in the free tier, unless you want to pay. Then if you want to pay, go for it. I can't speak as much to Azure API and Google Cloud. I know Google had the $300 credit that they were doing, and I think Azure has a free tier as well. Soft skills are huge. Need to be able to talk to people, work with people, admit your failures, because that's a huge thing. And continually looking for improvement in and of yourself, because technology is complicated. It's hard. Not everybody gets it. You know what I mean? And it just takes a while sometimes. And you just kind of have to approach it with humility and being able to talk to people. There's some free APIs here if you want to explore APIs. I'm hoping this slide is going to be somewhere available to click on. And I'm trying to blitz through this so we can do questions. And then Postman's another tool that's free to hit APIs with that you can experiment with. What else? There's some links. I'm not going to talk about them. So this is pretty cool. I know you can't read this, but check out this web link. This is effectively an open source roadmap to how to get into DevOps. You don't have to do everything here. You don't have to know everything here, but it shows you connected skills and paths and such that you could be working on and exploring to help establish a career in DevOps. And then another one I've always liked, and I'm sorry, this link is just chaos. But they did not, that was the only direct link I could find, and I wish I would have QR coded or something. But at any rate, if you Google CompTIA IT Certification Roadmap, you can find this. And even if you don't want to do the specific certification exams, it is a tremendous resource if you're looking for a path on how to find specific resources to learn from to get to that path. And then in the case of DevOps, the obvious one, you have you do have information securities everywhere now, so you might as well get in on that. But network and cloud, the IT services management, and of course the data and development, you can mix and match those. So if you wanted to be heavy on operations, maybe you just kind of get introduced to that, but then you run all the way through this purple line as an example. But I've always loved that. I thought they did a tremendous job putting that together. And then that is me, and I don't know if I ever said my name, but I think Dr. Ramage did. And let's do questions if you have questions.
It's on. One thing I didn't mention in your bio that I meant to, because I know we have somebody here from Shawnee. Was that, isn't it Shawnee that your
Shawnee Community College?
is your associates?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
yes.
So he actually is one of those transfer students we talked about the scholarship would work for. So anyway, I thought I would mention that.
Yeah.
Questions?
So you mentioned the small granular changes that makes it faster for your iteration cycles. What is like your favorite project management methodology to make small granular changes?
Yeah, we are, that's one of those questions I was hoping to avoid. Actually, that's hilarious. I actually had that thought. I was like, somebody's going to ask me about deployment methodologies. I'm not going to be able to answer it. But, I don't know. I'm not going to call myself an expert on that. We've got Scrum Masters and things that really wrangle us in. They do the herding of cats. You ever heard that? To handle some of that stuff. I don't even know how to answer that. I mean, for us, operations sometimes runs in and out of that because just being transparent, we're trying to mature this thing, and I would say we're early DevOps. So we're trying to do anything and everything we can in this, but we still have manual tasks that fall in and out of sprints. We have tasks that don't necessarily line up, but they keep us in line with, okay, this stuff's going to production, so you got to have this, 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 and this in order and ready to go before X date. And I'm thankful for that because calendars are my biggest struggle in life. I once bought my wife flowers on the wrong day for Valentine's Day because calendars. Just more transparency. She loves that. But anyway, did that not answer your question adequately? All right.
That might have been cheaper, actually.
Yeah. Well, it was, but she had to drive to Mayfield to get them at the time. Yeah. Things not to take my advice on.
Time for one more question.
Yeah. I've never lived that down. I don't know why. I was like, oh, it's on the 15th. I got this. Man, these are a good deal.
I don't really have a question, but more of an add-on to what you were saying. Programming and all the languages that you specified are not just for development. If you get into network infrastructures, be prepared to know Python, Extensible, Postman, XML, JSON, all the above to be able to function in networks also.
He's not wrong.
All right. So we are going to take a break. What time does it say we're coming back in here? 3:15? Is that right? 3:15. We'll be back in here. We will hear from Hunter Evans, who is with Microsoft, and he'll talk about low-code, no-code options. So if you don't know the programming languages and you still need to do some of that development, there's some pretty cool options out there for that. We'll also make sure you come back and if you don't have a blue ticket with a number on it, make sure you get it during the break, and when we come back in here, we'll do some giveaways. So we'll see you outside for some cookie dough. Yeah. So we'll be back in 15 minutes.
Can you hear me? Good? Okay. Look at you, got it all knocked out.
All right, does everybody have a ticket? All right. Do you all have tickets? I think y'all walked in. Do you have a blue ticket? Oh, okay, perfect. All right, let me shake them up a little bit. Oh, wait, you have, no, I'll let you pick anyway.
All right.
If you pick yourself, it'll be rigged.
We'll go with this one. 283691.
691. All right, T-shirt. If it's not the right size, then tell me afterwards, and I'll make sure you get the right size. Oh, sorry. All right, another T-shirt. I'll do this one. 711. Last three numbers, 711. 711. All right. All right. Now, last one. Some Under Armour earbuds. Last three numbers, 687.
Oh.
Well, I appreciate you being here. All right. I'm going to put the two that won shirts back in the pot. You're not getting anything else. But you still can't leave. Because I know where your office is, and I'll take them back. All right, so now that we're back, I want us to go ahead and keep moving forward with two more speakers, actually I guess three more speakers that I think are really interesting and in a place where a lot of us may find ourselves from time to time, and it's doing development and providing opportunities, because there's a lot of opportunities for apps nowadays, and even more so than even a year ago. So we asked Hunter Evans if he would come share. Hunter has spoken here before.
Yep. Security.
On security, but here at IT Matters. Hunter is from Marshall County. He graduated from Marshall County, went to Murray State, has 1 bachelor's and 2 master's degrees from Murray State. He gets bored and just keeps going.
Stealing all my slides, Michael.
What's that?
You're stealing all my slides.
Oh, I'm sorry. I won't say anything else. The only other thing I'll say about Hunter is that I was speaking to a class at Marshall County High School, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I mentioned that Hunter was going to come share with us. And the very first question the teacher said, "Think he'll talk to us too?" So this morning, Hunter was nice enough to go out and talk to his old high school class about all things Microsoft. And anytime I ask Hunter to do anything, he's always more than willing to do that for us. And I certainly appreciate it, and appreciate your willingness to come and share again today.
Yeah.
So I
Cheyenne?
won't show still anything else.
Cheyenne told me to ask if there's a Gabriel here from Marshall County High School. He was supposed to be coming this afternoon. He wanted to see if he was actually going to show up. So he wasn't in class this morning, but he was. Oh, sorry, Gabriel. You got busted. But, all right, are we good to go, Michael? Good deal. Hello, everybody. I'm Hunter Evans. Thanks for having me here today. It was a short drive up from Nashville last night, but as Michael said, I'm no stranger to the area. We're going to be talking today about Microsoft Powerapps and how we empower citizen developers with the low-code, no-code platform. Before we get started, I just want to hit some highlights and talk really about the product that we're talking about today. We're not talking about a solution where you can go and develop the next-gen app or game that's going to be put in the App Store or the Google Play Store and download. And what we're talking about are business-centric solutions that solve problems where there's gaps today. And so on the agenda, we're going to go through what are Power Apps, or what is Power Apps, why Power Apps, and I've got 2 short demos at the end to show you how these apps are scalable, how they're built rapidly, and even non-developers can build them. So before we get started, I know Michael tried to steal my thunder, but you're probably wondering, who is this guy up here in front of you? Why am I relevant? Why am I talking to you today? Well, I'm a native to the area. I graduated from Marshall County High School in 2010, immediately enrolled into Murray State under the TSM program, graduated with my bachelor's in 2014. I'm a repeat customer, so I came back for some more and graduated in 2018 with my master's in TSM, and then third time with an MBA from Murray State. I'm one of their best customers. Michael's trying to get me in the cybersecurity program, but we're not sure if we're going to come back or not. When I graduated in 2014, I started at Microsoft. I came in through our collegiate hire program. I started as a cybersecurity delivery consultant. I traveled the globe, went as far as Shenzhen, China. Closest I ever landed to home was in Carthage, Missouri, which was a 7-hour drive because you couldn't get a flight. And in 2019, I moved to the sales organization at Microsoft as an account technology strategist. That role was taking business problems and goals and aligning them with Microsoft solutions and creating roadmaps for customers and meeting the C-suite on what their objectives were and how Microsoft could support them. When I took that role, I moved to Nashville, and then most recently in July of this year, I was promoted to the account executive role. So it's a role in our sales organization where I work with enterprise-class customers, servicing their contracts and needs from a Microsoft standpoint. I did put a fun little picture in here. Michael will remember this. So as part of my tenure at Murray State and Microsoft and all my glory, we won the Itera case study competition. And so that's myself, Michael, and then my teammate, Chris Nalick, at the Itera conference in Indianapolis a few years ago. And then my wife and I have been on a personal mission to foster the next generation of Murray State racers. So we have a little girl. Her name is Renly. She's 19 months now, and coming up, and going to be the next generation that supports this beautiful campus and community. So as we get into the presentation, before we start, I want to answer the number one question that gets asked every time I do one of these talks, and that is, where can I go learn more? Well, we make it really easy at Microsoft. We actually call it Learn. And on powerapps.microsoft.com, there is a whole drop-down section where you can go. There's self-paced learning. There's customer stories and testimonials. If you're more advanced, you can get in the developer suite. If you want to see what's coming next for the roadmap or any future connectors for the product, it's all right there. So if you take anything away from today, know that there is a learning path for you created already. So raise your hand if you're in here today and you would consider yourself a traditional developer, somebody who, Visual Studio, Python, JSON, any of the above. I see one hand, 2.5, 3, 4, all right, less than 10 people. So you guys may have heard this term used in the last couple years, but there's a shortage going around. And there's a very fast-growing shortage for developers. There's an estimated shortage of about 1.4 million developer jobs open today, and that's forecasted to raise to over 4 million in 2025. Now, those developers are needed because we're expecting to see 500 million custom-developed apps over the next 5 years, and there's increasing demand not only at the enterprise scale, but also in the small, medium markets as well. So we bridge this gap at Microsoft by what we classify as a citizen developer. So everybody who didn't raise their hand earlier, this is you guys. These are people that actually create the content and use the apps to solve business problems themselves. These are not people who are sitting in closets and coding all night long. These are people who have point problems that they create custom solutions for. And we do that with Power Apps. So what is a Power App? Powerapps is Microsoft's suite of services and apps, as well as connectors that are built on the Microsoft Data Platform for rapid development and custom apps for business needs. These are, again, low-code, no-code apps. They're part of the Microsoft Power Suite. So if you've heard of Power BI, Power Automate, Flow, Powerapps is part of that whole suite. It is a licensed product. It's included in a lot of the Office 365 SKUs, and then there are additional license plans based on per app and per users for your environment. So why do we use Powerapps? In business today, there's a lot of challenges that are not just IT-related problems, whether it's legacy technical debt or paper processes that are taking too long to complete, whether it's a personnel or an approval flow that has to be done, whether it's just a rapid increase in demand and you're not able to scale fluently. Well, this is where Powerapps comes in and really bridges the gap where these solutions fall short. And let me build out the slide. So Powerapps has, it reaches about 250 million users today with your Office 365 and Microsoft Cloud. It bridges the gap between other systems like SAP, Workflow, Oracle, Salesforce, et cetera. It's able to create those point solutions where if those apps were able to talk to each other or bridge with one another, that you could improve your processes and innovate faster. So the benefits of having a low-code, no-code development platform include increased efficiency, flexibility for your developers, responsiveness to the market and development lead time, and the iterability to provide your customers with a consistent and scalable work solution. But I don't want you to just take my word for it. There have been many studies done on this, and the numbers speak for themselves. As we talk about Powerapps, we see an average of 188% return on investment in a 3-year time, a 74% reduction in development and training costs for the users, and about an 11 million net present value for enterprises with workforces of 10,000 or more. And it's not just us. Gartner also named Microsoft a leader for enterprise low-code application platforms, as well as Forrester in our low-code development platform for professional developers. We also see that 91% of the Fortune 500 companies out there today are using Powerapps. It's not just a point solution for a specific business or industry. It's cross-platform, cross-vertical, and is really helping businesses scale. So now I'm going to jump into a demo. It's going to take me just a second because I'm in a meeting. So let me get things pulled up and the right screen shared, because I know you want to see how this actually works. All right. So to get started with Powerapps, we go to that powerapps.microsoft.com. I'm going to sign in. Let me minimize this. So as I get signed in, I'm starting in a blank environment. I'm able to create a Canvas app, which is just a start-from-scratch app. There's no pre-built templates. Or I can start from any data point in the Microsoft Dataverse or from SharePoint, Excel, SQL, and there's some preview features down here that I'm not going to get into today. I used to travel all the time for my old job as a consultant. So I'm going to start from Excel, which means I'm going to build an Excel file. And my biggest pet peeve when I traveled was getting stuck in an airport. And when I would get stuck in the airport, I would have tons of time to figure out what I wanted to do, complain to the airlines, post on social media, and not spend time with my family. So one of the things I started doing is tracking my flight status and trying to determine which flights were more on time than others. And it really led me to learned that, if you take the early flight, you actually get out on time. But for this instance, I'm going to build a simple flight tracker. So as with all flights, they start with a date. And all flights have a flight number, so I'm going to build a table here. What airline I'd be flying on, the departing airport, the arriving airport, and the status. So just going to put in some dummy dates here. Let's say I flew on August 1st, 2022. My flight number was an American Airlines flight. I flew American Airlines. I left Nashville, which is BNA. I went to Charlotte, which is CLT. And we'll say that this one was on time. On my return trip, say I came back 5 days later. We'll say this is American Airlines 222. I left Charlotte this time, came to Nashville, and we'll say it's delayed. Now, this is just a very rudimentary table, but when I add this into a Power App, you'll be pretty amazed at what just the built-in functions are able to do. So I've created a table, I've formatted it. You can see my table name is Table 1. I'm going to name this Flight Tracker just for app purposes. And I'm going to save this. Now, Power Apps have to be saved somewhere that's accessible by the cloud. So I'm going to go to my personal workspace, and I've got the IT Matters conference here. We're going to call this Demo and save it. So now I'm going to close out of that, and I'm going to go back to my Power Apps, and I'm going to build from an Excel file. And it's going to do the Get Started screen. Here's all my connection points. You'll see the little diamond here. That's a premium connector. It's an additional paid service, but since I'm using Microsoft Excel, it's included. So we're looking for IT Matters and that file that I just built, demo. And it recognizes that there's a table there, and we're going to connect. So all I did was input 2 rows in Excel about some flights that I took back in August, and then told Power Apps to, hey, this would be kind of cool if there was a phone app for me to log this going forward. And so you'll see the Power App Studio launches. It takes my data from Excel, and right out the gate is a mobile app that shows the status of my flights, where they came from, and you'll see that this is a fully functioning app when I go to the app preview screen. So right out of the gate, I have 2 entries here, which is expected. As I click there, you'll see my columns with my data there. So you see I flew American Airlines. I went to Charlotte. The date was on 7/31. I left Nashville, my flight number, and that it was on time. If I wanted to add new rows to this and publish this app, which I'm not going to publish because this is actually Microsoft's IT workspace, but if I wanted to add, say I went on Delta, and I went to Atlanta, and let's pick a date. Let's say I flew yesterday. I left Nashville. My flight number was Delta, and it was on time. When I publish that, it actually goes back and updates the app and the Excel file for the table that relates to this. When I close out of the preview pane and how the app actually works, you can see that there are the tree view on this side of what is built inside this app. So if I wanted to rename Table 1, so when I publish this app, I know what it is. If I want to rename that to my flight tracker, I'm able to do so right here in the window without any custom development. If I want to change and say, I don't want to know what airline I flew on, but I want to know where I flew to, should be arriving airport, I'm able to change that, and I'm able to go in below and edit in real time all the fields that I input from the table so that they appear right here. And we will change this to status. And you'll see it updates concurrently because it's based on the fields. This is the browse screen. I'm also able to flip to the details page, and I can reorder how the app puts out the data. I can change the font format. I can change any inputs or formatting based on date and time or importance. I can change the input fields from text to radio bubbles to drop downs and selects. Everything can be done, and as you can tell, I'm not a developer of any sort. So within 10 minutes of turning this on and publishing this, you could be launching from your phone, sitting in an airport, tracking all your flight status, updating your colleagues on where you're stuck. And it doesn't just publish for you. It publishes available for anybody in your company. A data analyst could take this and figure out where your lost time is. If you're stuck in airports all the time, maybe you need to not fly American, maybe you need to fly Delta, or maybe when you're flying out of certain airports, there's airlines that are constantly delayed. You can use this data repeatedly across different operations in your own businesses today to solve problems and make your employees more efficient in the future. So that's what's called a Canvas app. It's created, just from a table. What I want to show you now is a pre-built solution. So I'm going to back up because I'm not going to publish. I published earlier today, and now all of Microsoft has a demo flight tracker, so it's fun. But if you really want to have some fun, there's all these templates. So when you come down here, these are pre-built templates that are available to anybody that has an Office subscription and a Powerapps license. I don't know what Murray State uses for their help desk, but we're going to build a help desk app. So we're going to select the help desk template. We're going to hit create. It may spin out on me, and I have to do it again, just from previous experience doing this. All right. So this is the help desk template. What I want to show you is really handy is here in the setup file, you'll see the instructions are already linked. So when I click them, you'll see, oh, Microsoft Learn. Here's how you set up the help desk app and use the template that's already built in Powerapps. Now, to be able to use the app, we would have to publish it. It uses Azure Active Directory to assign identities for who's able to create tickets and assign tickets. So we're not going to get into the weeds of the app, but I am going to show you how easy it is to customize the interface for this app. So as we go back to the login screen here, you can see just the pre-built template. Not that we have anything against this lady, but we're going to go ahead and change this to Murray State, as if Murray State was building this. So I put my Murray State logo back in there. We don't like red because we're blue and gold. So we're going to change the colors here to blue. We're going to change the highlight function just so I can show you. Let me show you what I'm talking about. As I am using this app, if I want to hover over here, you see I have a red outline. That's not a Murray State color, so we're going to change that to the gold outline. We're going to come here, select the color, and we have to use hexadecimal for this field. But when I save that and preview, you'll see now as a user using this app, when I hover, I now have a blue and gold login. This is a live functioning app, just like I was describing before. When I log in as a user, you see I haven't set up any of the other pages, but if I want to create a ticket, my ticket ID is 3 because I have none in there. I can say my laptop not connecting to Wi-Fi. And it's a high priority. And we'll say add a conference. We create our ticket. Help desk ticket has been submitted. And then if I had an admin capability, I would be able to log in here, review the ticket, assign it, get in contact with the help desk, and resolve that user's issue. But this is just 2 examples of the literally endless possibilities that come with Powerapps. You can solve point solutions for your business. If you have connectors that or systems that are not intuitive today, you can bridge that gap. And it's definitely something that's worth taking a look at. It's worth tasking not only your IT teams, but your business operations teams on how they can be more innovative in their business. So that's everything I have for today. I know it was short and sweet. We were running slow on time, but any questions that I can answer, or one in the back? I have to say.
Test. Who was it?
Thank you. Sorry.
Sorry, got you now.
From what I understand, essentially, this particular application is mainly used, or this platform rather, is mainly used in a graphical user interface manner, essentially to fulfill the shortage of non-traditional developers, if I understand that correctly.
Yep.
But I'm also quite curious, because as I understand this to be hosted by Microsoft or led
Yep.
by Microsoft.
Yeah.
Is this particular platform in need of traditional developers, people who are interested in the traditional format of Python, Java, other object-oriented programming styles?
Absolutely. So everything in Powerapps connects to Visual Studio, connects to GitHub, it connects to all the apps that you would be developing in today. Salesforce, Oracle, Workflow, everything is there. It's part of the larger suite. As I mentioned, the Power Suite, so you get Power Automate, Power BI as you create workflows. You can build it natively in the Microsoft Dataverse, so everything gets stored on Microsoft. You use connectors. There's over 500 different service connectors out today. And it is, the license changes when you add in custom connectors versus just native Microsoft connectors. So, but yeah, it's absolutely, you would think of it as your citizen developers would solve the problem, bring you a rudimentary version of the app, and your developers could take that, scale with it, and return it back to the organization as a full-fledged built-out solution. Good question. Any others?
Since the person online asked the question about the Google person earlier, I'm going to ask the same question for you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to ask it a slightly different way because I know the answer.
Okay.
How'd you get started at Microsoft?
I applied online. I know that sounds crazy, but so when I was at Murray, I knew that I needed a job and was graduating in May. I had an internship at Westlake Chemical in Calvert City. They didn't have anything coming available. Their IT staff was pretty short, and then they're headquartered in Houston. So I started applying everywhere. Sent out over 900 job applications in like 13 countries. I just wanted a job lined up for when I graduated. And I'd applied at Google, applied at Amazon. I had applied for logistics companies and Disney and I mean, literally everywhere. And I was like, man, I got to be missing somewhere. And I applied online at Microsoft. Microsoft has a college hire program. It's called the Aspire Experience now. Had an interview in Dr. Gantz's office, phone interview with Microsoft. Flew to Dallas, Texas about 2 weeks later, did a in-person screen, passed the in-person screen, and 3 weeks after that, got the offer. So it went pretty quick, but it's worked out very well, and the opportunities, we have 140,000 employees, and everybody moves around all the time. So
For that in-person screen, I assume you had a different shirt on.
I did. I'm on PTO today, so I'm enjoying it. Yeah, no, I was in a suit.
No, I'm just kidding with you.
Go ahead.
So one thing I noticed was whenever you showed the actual app itself, it looked very similar to what Android Studio creates. So I was wondering if the creation of the Microsoft app platform was similar to Android Studio in any way.
I don't know the similarities there. I can tell you that these apps are created and meant to be used on phones, or they're deployed through Teams today or a Powerapps connector. So it's meant for handheld devices. There are full intuitive apps that are built for browser and more desktop type computers, but they're further along the Powerapps stage than just the initial creation and publishing of the app.
So 2 questions that are online. First is, if I want to, as an individual, get Powerapps, how can I get it?
Powerapps.com, sign in, buy a license. I think $5 a user per month, or if you want the full suite, it's like $20 per user per month.
And then the other question is, well, I think you kind of answered it in the number of big companies that are using it. How often do people use it? But I think you kind of touched on that.
So one of my customers in Nashville just made a massive investment in Powerapps. It was a 7-figure investment. They're deploying it and using it every day. Probably the most successful one that I can speak to was a utility company, and they developed an app for their workers to check in as they were checking power lines and sources. It went live after 3 days of development, and I think it had 11,000 users within a week. So it's incredibly versatile. It scales extremely well. Like I said, you can start with a small idea to solve a very pinpoint problem and scale the solution out to be, one of your largest apps in your enterprise.
Oh, 2 more.
I like this guy. He won a T-shirt. He feels pressure to ask questions.
So I know you said earlier about the scalability of these apps. When you demonstrated it went to a mobile app, can you develop that into maybe a web app or other platforms?
You can. Yeah, so the templates that I chose were specific to being on phones. But when you look at the connectors here, let me reshare my screen. What I built was called Canvas apps, just because it's a blank canvas. But as you look at like Dataverse or SQL or some of these image purview, or even some of the other larger templates, when I look at the fundraiser template, you can see that's scaled out for a full web app view. And these are still published in Teams today. But good question.
All right, 1 more.
Thanks. Sorry, I know this is my second time asking a question, but I'm also curious. When I'm looking at this particular presentation today, I'm kind of reminded of the technological revolutions we've seen across the computing industry. For instance, when we began in the 1980s, when object-oriented programming was considered all the rage, followed by the multiprocessor parallelism of the 2000s, and in today's day, we're kind of seeing the same revolution take place in regards to quantum computing. And then the traditional methodology of computer-oriented engineering typically was through hard code, object-oriented programming methods, now is machine learning and artificial intelligence. Sorry if I'm going on a rant, but...
No, that's okay. I'm following you.
Thanks. When I see your presentation today, I'm kind of noticing that we're seeing a modern revolution of sorts in regards to programming, in regards to app development and software engineering. Yep. In the next 24 years, now this is chiefly a matter of speculation, of course, but do you see us potentially transitioning from a world in which we essentially developed applications in interdigital format to potentially a world where either traditional development either falls by the wayside or becomes irrelevant potentially?
So the short answer is not a chance, never. The longer answer is there's always going to be a need for a more fully developed solution. This low-code, no-code platform is to bridge the gap that businesses see today, the staffing shortages, the talent training that are really plaguing the industry. So as this becomes more scalable, I would say there will probably be some reduction in the amount of development or specialty that is needed to create those business-centric solutions, but I don't think that'll ever go away. If it did, you'd see multi-billion-dollar corporations put out of business by $5 apps, and I don't see that as the future. There's definitely a need and a place for this, and there's a need and a place for the larger scale systems as well. But great question.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
The first program language or first program that you learn is Hello World. Just the simple print out to the screen. I feel like we're going to get to a spot where that first program you write might be through something like this, but that allows the developers to do something that's even more complicated because virtual reality and just all these other opportunities that you can do are more complicated, so that those developers are going to be doing something much more complex. And these very basic things, you might not even have to be a developer to do. Anyway, just a thought, but that's a good question. I do wonder, that's a good question to think about, where we will be in 24 years.
I thought you said 2 to 4.
Oh, I thought it was 24.
Oh, 20 to 40, we both know.
Yeah.
But,
other questions? Oh, man, all the way back up there.
You're getting a workout in. No, I will say, as we were talking about this, when we talk about the Power Suite, this is kind of the interface that builds the app. There's Power Automate, which is all the flows and processes that collect the records and tally records together. There's AI and chatbots and bots that take inputs and compress the data, manipulate it in certain ways. This is just one piece of a broader platform in Microsoft. It's just kind of how people who aren't traditionally developers are able to jump in and start building things for their team and for themselves.
If you had to say, what does the most complicated Power App look like?
Oh, there's apps that started as like 1 or 2 inputs on a phone that now run entire ticketing systems for customers. I'm not going to say it's a ServiceNow or a ticketing system replacement, but it's creative to see how customers are able to input data into these apps. I have a law firm that I'm working with that's exploring some really cool ways to input case data and how the whole system would build up a Microsoft Teams team, how it would input customer files, how it would apply security protections to the data, how it assign team members, how it tracks time. Starts as a little bitty thing like, hey, we need to have a case for each customer that we have, and now it's building out their entire enterprise for how they service clients. So
we used it to create an app for like CIOs to be able to pull from multiple different monitoring systems to have real-time monitoring of their own on their phone. They could actually see stuff happening as their techs were seeing stuff come across, and it aggregated the data from network monitoring systems and server monitoring systems, et cetera, all into one little app. Is pretty cool.
That's awesome. Great use case.
All right. With that,
was that for which business? Kaleo.
With that, I'll say thank you very much.
No problem. Glad to be here.
It's always good to hear you, and I don't know that you've done a presentation yet where you didn't also do a demo, and I like the demos.
Well, the demos are more fun than just talking at slides. I'll say students don't listen to me, but I use the case method here, which was copy and steal everything. So Microsoft has some really great marketing slides, and I may have used those for most of my slide deck. But
Well, you should.
What's really fun is actually seeing it, seeing how intuitive and easy it is, and then going and learning about it.
All right.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you very much. All right. Our final presenters, set of presenters, and I'm going to introduce Monica. I'm going to let Monica introduce John. Is Monica Belak, and hang you up.
Yep. And then if you'll just,
Oh.
We can sign out later.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
You're good.
What number are you? I'll introduce you, but number 2. She's on 2, and then when John speaks, he'll be on 1.
I just said it right there.
Okay. The last time we met, before we stopped meeting in person for IT Matters, Monica Belak shared about Sprocket and an update on what Sprocket was and what it was doing. And that was, what was that, 19?
4 years ago?
Was that fall 19? Well, a lot has happened in Sprocket world in those couple of years. So we thought it might be a good idea to bring Monica back and share a little bit about what is going on and how every single one of us in this room can get involved. And there are opportunities for all of us to get involved, whether you're in the industry or you're a student looking at where to plug in after college. There's opportunities. So I will turn it over and let you provide a little bit about what's going on with Sprocket.
Awesome, thank you. Thanks. Hey, you guys. How does that work? You can tell I'm not the tech person here. So, but I like working with tech people, and I'm really excited to be here with you guys. So my job, I'm the director of Sprocket. Actually, kind of founded it just because I had to have a nonprofit to do the project. So, but I'm a strategic designer, and I just build things, and I build things with people. And so I always work with teams, which I love. And so this was built through a huge community effort, and the Paducah Public Schools actually helped start it. They had a foundation. So we were working on something called the Innovation Hub at the time. If any of you have heard of it, it's a vocational school, but it has this massive maker space. And they do robotics, and they learn how to build drones, and they're doing CAD, and they're doing crazy, amazing things over there. It's a really cool space. But then we started doing that, and we started working around with entrepreneurs, and all these adults showed up. And we realized, okay, we're done with the high school stuff. We need to start working with adults, and we really need to talk about the digital economy, which is, I'm assuming, what all of you are about, right? Pretty much, you're all going to be tech workers, do you think? How many of you are a student right now? Okay, that's a lot of students. How many of you are freshmen? How many are sophomore? Okay, juniors, seniors. All right, okay, awesome. So you kind of rule the day. By the way, you're in the best course you can be in, course line, or what do we call that? Degree that you can be in this current economy. This is a digital economy, and we are looking for tech workers like nobody has ever looked for them before. And you get to do all kinds of cool things. You can either work on teams, you can be a developer working kind of on a team, but maybe in a more of an agile Scrum situation, or you could be a UX or UI designer. You can do a lot of visual work. You can be a user researcher. You can do business case. It's amazing what you get to do. So we were excited about that, and we wanted to actually help connect the region to all the learning and the work and the business building that happens around the digital economy. And this is why we do it. This is one reason why. We also just like it. But by 2025, and I think in the last slide, he alluded to this just for developers, but there's going to be 25 million digital jobs. That is more than manufacturing and construction combined. That's a big deal. And these jobs have a median salary of $80,000, but I actually think that's changed probably. I was just looking at jobs for strategic designers, and the jobs in my field for like UX, people like to try to peg me as a UX designer, even though I do like customer experience. They've all gone up. They're well past the 100,000 mark. The highest one I saw recently was 250. It's crazy. I went to school at Parsons, School of Design, and we keep a Slack channel open with something called Opportunities, and there's constant job postings. And I just saw one for NASA, looking for a customer experience designer. So there's all kinds of things out there. But we think this is a big deal. And we think that the future of our community is kind of resting on you guys being really active and engaged and super smart. So we want to bring everybody together. That's kind of part of what I do is I bring the community in. I'm trying to bring the region in. So how many of you live in Murray? Do you all live in Murray? So you got to go to dinner tonight, right? You're going to have to go to dinner after this, maybe. If you go over to the Coke plant, do you know where the Coke plant is here in Paducah? Where the mellow mushroom is? Go around the very back side of the building, and you'll see Sprocket. You'll see a sign for it. Look in there. You can probably open the door. If you can't, ring the doorbell, and I'll let you in remotely and check it out. We have a co-work space. So co-work spaces are where entrepreneurs, freelancers, remote workers, whatever go. And we have super high-speed internet. We have phone booths that are really cool that you can go in and do all your Zoom calls. And basically have this fabulous kitchen, and we stock it. So you get snacks, you get work done, you meet people, you find out what's going on. And then we run a lot of workshops. And I'll tell you about those in a minute. But we're going to start in October. We're going to start Freelance Fridays. So usually we have a membership base. It's $75 a month. Tell me you're a student. I'll give you a special discount. Come on Fridays every month, every week next month, and it's free. We also have like a day pass. So if you found yourself in Paducah and you're like, I need to get some stuff done, come on in. We'll sign you up, and you can work in our space. It's in the very back. It's in the old warehouse space, and it is absolutely beautiful and super cool place to be. The other thing we do, and this is our programs, is, well, let me ask this. How many of you have a side hustle, or you have a business idea, and it's percolating, and you're like, oh, this is a great problem to solve, so yes. Anything like that? Like you're like, this would be really cool. Even if I could create this line of code to make this thing do this, that's what we're looking for. We do something called the West Kentucky Tech Incubator. So we run an incubator program. You have to apply. Basically, we want to know the problem you're solving, and we want to know if you, and you'll have to tell us too in the application, what does the problem look like in terms of the market size? Like, how many people have this problem? What industry is it? How are you proposing to solve it? That kind of stuff. It's a pretty lean, easy application, but the questions are a little bit like you have to think about them. We got to know that you kind of want to do this. And then you make a commitment, and we do a full 12-week program to help you take your idea through something called the Lean. Have you guys ever heard of Lean methodology or the business model canvas? So if you haven't heard of it, you have an idea, please look it up. Please just Google it. Find some people who there's videos galore on YouTube. It's super simple, but it's super smart. It's a one-pager. You can build a canvas as a one-page business model, and it'll help you think about and test out your idea right there in a snapshot. So we teach people how to do that. We also will build out some low-code, no-code prototypes. And we're always looking for developers, by the way, that can help us do things like this. And then we'll validate your business model through something called customer discovery, because even if you have the most beautiful tech stack, if nobody wants to use it, it doesn't matter. So technology is only as good as it solves a problem of friction or in cost usually for humans. So we're real into that. We love to help. Let me give you a really cool example of somebody that actually is in our incubator right now, and he's about to launch his app. I don't think it's in the store yet, but it's called Seed Stories, so be looking for it. If you have anybody in your family that's in agriculture and they're doing organic farming. So we had this organic farmer out in Princeton, and he was doing USDA organic certification, and it's really heavy duty. Like you got to know what soil's there. You've got to have screenshots of what the seed was, what it looked like, what batch did you get it from, all this stuff. So he was buried under spreadsheets, but he's a farmer. But he's on the computer all the time because he's got to track all this data so that he can keep his certification for his organic farming. And he was just like, I need a system. So he started to just create a system for himself. Let me hit one more. There we go. So what we did was we paired his problem. We started kind of testing it, mocking it up. This is the first iteration of something that he did. We used a UX designer. Now, if you guys don't know what UX design is, find out, because UX designers are the brilliant people who hit the low-code, no-code apps and just can make stuff like you've never believed and help you think about workflow inside your app. Then we take that UX piece at the top, we figure out what all his screens are going to do and what can we afford, basically. And then we put that to a developer who then pushes out a prototype of his app. He then takes that to other organic farmers and to conferences, and he's testing, he's constantly testing it. They're iterating on that design test, that's all they do. And now in this winter, we'll have an app that he's gonna launch, and we're hoping it also goes into the hobbyist market for people who are also interested in just keeping their own gardens, their larger gardens organic, and this would be a way for them to kind of keep records. If you want to do this tech incubator, I want to talk to you. It starts in January. You could do it. It's at least a 10-hour commitment a week, but it's virtual. For the most part, we'll have coaching calls, but they're on a Zoom because everybody's all over the region, and we'll end it with a pitch. And we'll put you in front of investors, and if you have an idea, you might actually be able to, and somebody thinks it's investable. So we're only looking for scalable ideas, investable ideas. We'll have you pitch, and we'll see what happens. So that's one of the things we do. Another cool thing that we do is something called First 50K. And this is where we put out a call on a platform called F6S, and we say, hey, we're looking for some really great ideas that could live and grow here in West Kentucky, and we're going to give you $50,000, and we're not going to take any equity in your business. You have to stay in Paducah for 1 year, and you have to show up when we ask you to come and tell about your product. And it's been amazing. So right now, we just recruited 3 people. They're finishing their first year. This is Sue Spencer. She has the coolest company. It's called Seamly Systems. She's made the technology so that you can load a pattern for clothing and do all custom fit clothes. So if you're a clothing manufacturer, you would take all your single pattern, and then you can digitize that, and then you can resize, and then people can put in custom measures and make custom fit clothing. Super cool. So, and she's working with a ton of designers. She's actually one of those people who used to work for NASA. She used to do spacesuits. So she's a super nerd when it comes to technology. Another one that we have, this is Stephen Bonhams. He just moved here from Seattle. He was with Microsoft, and actually probably still is a little bit. And but he has a company called Feed Coyote. Now, if any of you are freelancers, you do any side work, customer experience, UI, developer, you're a photographer, doesn't matter. This platform is like the place to go and find short-term gigs. Like, hey, I need some work. I do photography on the weekends, or it can be anything. I do makeup for weddings, all that kind of stuff. Any kind of freelancer job, This is where you go to find somebody who's trying to find people for a team. Maybe they're going to make a video and they need a script writer, they need a filmmaker, whatever. That's what you do there. So he's doing a freelance collaboration network. Super cool. He just moved here. And then these guys at eWagers you guys familiar with esports? Anybody not familiar with esports? They do a betting platform, and it's integrated into, which John is going to tell us in a minute, into all the gaming options. So Noah is actually from SIU. So you don't have to be that far away to get into our first 50K. And so really exciting. They actually have offices in our space as well. And we're just trying to support, grow anybody in the digital economy. If you're interested in any of our events, we're going to have a whole bunch of stuff throughout October, November. We're going to start doing some innovation workshops. You can hit the QR code, go to our events page, or go to our newsletter, sign up, and we'll shoot you emails. You can follow us on all kinds of social media as well, at Sprocket Innovation. Any questions, thoughts, before I introduce our next guest?
There was a, oops, sorry, that was loud.
Yeah.
There was a question online. I would assume a student interested in that discount.
Yes, they just need to talk to Kobe or Monica and tell us you're a student, and we'll probably make it so super cheap you'll want to come all the time. So, really and truly, it's probably, I don't know, $15 a month or something. I don't know. Kobe's closer to college student. He will come up with a fantastic deal that meets your needs. So, and if you're even if you're just kind of checking it out, just come on in. Check it out. We'd love to have you. So part of what we do too, and we're also part of Grow West. That's one of our, that's just our regional entrepreneur network here. We work with the state as well. But as part of growing those companies, I want to introduce our board chair, John Pruitt, who is starting a new company that's fantastic called Contender Esports. You want to tell a little bit more about it? It's going to actually, well, I don't want to give all your cool things away, but you do want to stick around today, okay? I'll let you know.
It's working. Can you hear me? So my name is John Pruitt. I was an IT guy for 30 years until last year when I decided I'd had enough of that nonsense. But I had a great career in IT. I worked for some of the largest companies in the world. I did a stint in Silicon Valley in the late 90s and early 2000s. And my brother and I founded a company here in Paducah in 2004 called Kaleo Technologies. Today we employ more than 100 people, about half here and half around the country, and specialize in IT management for mid-sized companies. So first of all, before I get into what I'm doing, I want to talk a little bit about Sprocket. So I got involved with Sprocket a few years ago because I believe in the vision of doing this. When I was in San Jose, it was just commonplace to have these sort of places to get together and collaborate and network and stuff like that. So most of you are students. So let me tell you something that I was told when I started my career. It's not what you know, it's who you know. That's what makes your career. And I notice you've gone to the dark side, by the way. He went into sales. And it's really, really, really true. You need to network. I don't care what kind of technical job you have or how much you love technology versus interacting with people. You need to be able to network. It will make the difference between a great career and an okay career. And so the best way to do that is to find places where you can naturally network with other techie people. And you'll find that ends up being how you move around in your career, whether that's online in different groups and stuff like that online, or at a space like Sprocket. And so I definitely want to encourage you to take advantage of that. come hang out, watch online, follow it on Facebook, and there's constant events and stuff to come to, learning experiences or just getting together and hanging out and talking and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff like that. Our mission at Sprocket, it's what's called a BHAG, and I don't know if you've ever heard that term before. It means big, hairy, audacious goal. And what it is this like this gigantic goal that seems impossible but is really motivating. So for instance, SpaceX's BHAG is to make humans a multiplanetary species, right? That's their BHAG, right? And so obviously that's a big goal, pretty inspirational actually. Our BHAG is to make Paducah a top 10 tech destination in the country, competing with San Jose and Austin and Salt Lake City and places like that, right? Where if the Washington Post puts out a list in their business section of the top 10 places to go in the country for tech, Paducah is on the list. Now that seems impossible, right? That's ridiculous. And it should, right? It should make you go, either that's crazy, or it should make you go, wow, that's awesome, I want to be a part of that. Right? So that's a good BHAG when it does that. And I feel like it does that. So to get there, our interim goal is to make Paducah a top 10 micropolitan tech destination. So Paducah, if you didn't know this, is what's called a micropolitan. It's between just a small town and a big metropolitan town like Nashville or St. Louis or something like that. So we're in that in-between range. And there's a lot of cities around the country like that, Bowling Green and places like that. And so we actually get into top 10 micropolitans for other things, for the arts and as a destination for a vacation and stuff like that. So we want to make it a top 10 tech destination for micropolitans first, and then we'll work our way to the other goal. So we need young people that are growing up in this area that have family here to stay here, right? And so the onus is on the community to create an environment where you want to stay here and where it's possible for you to stay here. So part of Sprocket's mission is to create lots of tech jobs in the area for people like you who can get a great tech job here. Now the pandemic has helped because it's pretty easy to get an online, a remote job these days. But still, you want to be able to have opportunities locally for that. And then the other piece of that is important is that it's a great place to live where you have things that you want to do, stuff like that, entertainment, have your tribe, your circle of friends, all that kind of stuff, that you're doing stuff with others. So a group of investors and I last year started a company called Relentless Contenders. We are opening up Contender Esports gaming centers. How many of you are gamers? Okay, quite a few. And how many of you are familiar at all with esports? Okay, pretty much everybody. How many of you watch gaming streamers? People who are playing video games and streaming it. Okay, just about everybody. All right, so I don't have to explain all that to you. Normally when I'm doing this kind of talk, I have to explain what that even is, right? And I'll go into stats, like, for instance, there are more viewers of esports in the United States than all other professional sports except the NFL. And almost all of those viewers are under the age of 25. That's amazing. That's a cultural shift in entertainment. The video game industry is the largest entertainment industry in the world. I didn't know this till yesterday. GTA 5 is the largest single earning piece of entertainment media in the history of entertainment media. It's earned more money than anything else, any movie, any television series, anything. That's pretty wild too. So there's this growing trend amongst young people especially to shift their entertainment to online streaming, gaming, esports, all that kind of stuff, and tabletop gaming as well, which is, it goes under the radar, but it's huge. And so what we are doing is try to create a space locally
in which people who love gaming can get together and play games together, watch tournaments, participate in tournaments. We'll have at least 2 national tournaments here in Paducah every year, probably Call of Duty tournaments, maybe Valorant, stuff like that. And so what we're doing, so we're not open yet. We're planning on opening up in a few months. And so we're actually doing weekly gameplay and tournaments and hanging out and stuff like that right in this room on Thursday evenings. So right after this, we have our Thursday night game night. Tonight, we are doing a parent-child Mario Kart tournament. This is for a mom or dad or an uncle or aunt or whatever with 12-year-old and under competing 6 teams in each race. So 12 racers, and we'll have prizes and all that kind of stuff. We've done a bunch of Smash Brothers tournaments. We've done some Splatoon tournaments, stuff like that. So in a few months, the center will open. Find us online at, right now we have a Facebook page, Contender Esports Paducah. Like our page and follow us so you can see kind of what we're doing. We'll have different kinds of tournaments. We're going to have an Apex tournament coming up that we're going to play over at Massac County High School, which, by the way, tell your younger siblings, if they're interested in gaming, there are scholarships available. Massac County High School has won national championships in Overwatch. And 6 of their team members, since they started a few years ago, have gotten full ride scholarships to universities on esports. So it's a big growing deal. So last thing I want to say about all that, how did that come about? Well, all of that came about, what we're doing with all that stuff, because we hang out at Sprocket, right? All of the people who are invested, they met all through Codify and Sprocket. And so that's what I'm talking about when I say you need to network. You need to find places like Sprocket and meet people, just get to know people. Just ask them questions about themselves, things like that. And you'll start to develop a network. And I'm telling you, it will be amazing the kinds of things that can happen. I ended up in my career starting in Dallas for a little networking company. And later, I ended up through that kind of thing at stuff where I was speaking to, when I went to the dark side, speaking to thousands and thousands of Centric users at the time in the late 90s. And so it makes the difference in your career to do that. So come out to Sprocket, hang out here with us tonight. I think it's going to be really fun, and network. So any questions?
All right, so let me turn on your microphone and say that again. Well, I'm sorry, I thought you still had it next to you.
I do. So, yeah. So student rate, bring your ID. It's $15 a month, and your first month is free. And then John has something happening right after this.
Yeah, right? We'll start our setup as soon as this is done.
Questions? All right.
Hey, John. You mentioned tabletop games. Are you doing card games? Are you doing board games? Or what?
I meant to say something about that. So one of the things that we're trying to do a number of different things in the center. We'll have concessions, food, stuff like that. We'll also have digital tabletop gameplay, where we have tables with big screen TVs sunk into the table, where you can plug in your laptop, you can do Fantasy Grounds, Warhammer, that kind of stuff, as well as you've got a cover for the table to do traditional tabletop games, or Magic, or whatever kind of stuff that you want to do. Plus, in Paducah, we may not be able to do this everywhere, but in Paducah, we're planning on doing VR gaming as well. I've been trying to get a group here on Thursday nights to start I bring D&D stuff every week And so if you want to play D&D, come out on Thursday nights, and we'll definitely put that together. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Have you all finalized a location yet?
We've been working on it. That's actually pretty hard in a small town because you've got certain, like we have to have a lot more air conditioning than retail normally has to have and stuff like that. I think we finally found the right place. So I don't want to jinx it and say where it is, but I think we have it now.
Okay, fantastic. Other questions?
Yeah, so come out and we'll get a game going.
Get it started for us.
Oh, you're in Nashville. Oh. See what I mean? It's just networking, right? Yeah.
All right, question.
Sorry. Just one more question. I'm kind of looking at your program, and last year or two when I was at Murray State, I've been trying to see if there's interest in this because it may seem odd, but there might be some students who, even though they may not play games themselves, really love and are fascinated and captivated by the development of games, the mathematics behind it, the development behind it, the computer programming. I was wondering, as you work with Sprocket, have you maybe, I'm just asking because I'm kind of curious, maybe seeing about people who maybe want to learn game development on their free time?
So that's a great question. I actually wasn't going to say anything, but since you asked, I will. So we have kind of a roadmap of what we want to build on, and I'm talking about relentless contenders at this point. And in that roadmap is a game studio, because we know we have a program at Murray State that produces developers for game development that don't have that opportunity here. And so we want to build a game studio. Yeah, so that's coming. I don't have time frame for that at this point. It just depends on how quickly we can grow and do stuff and put that together. But I think that's a great way to accomplish the mission that I was talking about, keeping you guys here. Well, then we have to offer the jobs for the things that you want to do, right? And that's certainly one of them.
John, he just asked me a question, and my answer was vague, so you may have a better number. He asked how many schools in our region support esports now, and I said most, but I don't know.
So it's really, really interesting, actually. In Western Kentucky, it's actually very few. The rest of Kentucky all have esports programs. They're all competing against each other. If you go to about Madisonville east, the entire state is doing esports at the high school level. West of that, there's a few. Tillman is, and I think 3 others in the area are doing what's called varsity esports. And the rest have either nothing or they have clubs.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
There's a lot with clubs. But
Yeah, there's a lot of clubs, and the club is a good start. And a part of our mission at Relentless Contenders is to really get that going at all of the high schools and the middle schools in the area. We just helped to start a middle school program at Paducah Middle School. And so we're a little bit behind the rest of the state. Illinois, it's everywhere in Illinois. And it's a big deal. It's a really big deal.
So you mentioned events with like national events, tournaments to Call of Duty and Valorant. What kind of prize pool would those have to attract such big national attention?
So those are all through the Contender Gaming Network. So Contender Esports is a franchise company, and they own a network called the Contender Gaming Network. And I want to say the prize pools for the national tournaments are like 25 grand, something like that. We'll do a lot of regional tournaments and stuff like that, and I would expect, depending upon what it is, $500 to a couple of $1,000 prize pools for those.
Other questions?
We are actually doing prize pools for the stuff we're doing right now. It's just GameStop gift card kind of stuff right now. But
Somebody else? We got plenty of time. Well, not really, because as soon as we get done, he sets up.
How does Contender feel about providing a platform for indie game developers?
For
indie game
developers.
Yeah, just indie,
So-
like independent.
How many of you guys follow Donkey on like YouTube or Twitch? You do. Okay. Did you see that he just announced that he's going to be a game publisher? Yeah. And I'm thinking that is awesome. And that's what I envision us doing, right? Is helping, basically become a publisher and help indie game studios to do stuff, develop some of our own games and things like that. I personally think that's the way to go, especially for a smaller community. You're not going to be a giant studio, an EA or something like that, right? But there's so much opportunity if you're creative, innovative, stuff like that, to create something that just goes like viral.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate the update.
Thank you.
And I have a couple of more things to give away. Name tag fell off. I'm trying to find it. Well, first of all, before I give the last few things away, first of all, I didn't get a CFSB hat. I guess those were outside. I see a bunch of hats, and I didn't get one. Andy's running. On the back of your, maybe I should have made it all white. I noticed Monica filling up all the white tiles. On the very bottom, we do IT Matters every fall. We do Security Matters every spring. April 20th, it's supposed to be 23. I blame my proofreader. Well, I wasn't looking at John. I was looking at Randall. Sorry, it's supposed to say 2023. April 20th, this coming year, in the spring, we will be back together for Security Matters in Murray. So go ahead and put it on your calendars. I actually already have a few speakers lined up that have already expressed interest in wanting to speak. We'll have a good lineup, so make sure you put that. That's a Thursday. It'll be the same format that it has been. Actually, we decided to change rooms a little bit. So instead of moving to the ballroom for lunch, we're just going to be in the ballroom the whole time. That way we have a table. We can put our note or our computer, whatever, on the table in front of us instead of having to put it in our lap. So we thought that might be a nice change. So anyway, put that on your calendar. Let me do a couple more T-shirts first. And I noticed he left. So I'm going to hunt his office down and take his earbuds back. All right. Last number, 691. 691? Oh. All right. Okay. Maybe I need to shake them up a little bit better then. Did you get one? Not saying you're getting drawn, but I want everybody to be in there. All right. All right, number 675. All right, 675. All right, and 694. How about that? Students got all the student shirts. All right, now my last pair of earbuds. 688. Somebody leave. 688. All right. Before we wrap up, before we adjourn, let me first of all say thanks again to CFSB for co-hosting this with us each year, and thanks to AT&T for their sponsorship. For those that don't know, there are a couple of other events going on right now. One is in Owensboro right now, that is the Kentucky League of Cities annual conference. So they were running from here to Owensboro to get there for speaking, where they're speaking there. And then the other one, who our building person is Dan Lavitt for our, well, he's our extended campus person now, but he's filling in for Paducah. And this weekend, that means he has to go to Barbecue on the River. I asked him if he was manning the beer garden. He wouldn't commit to that, but he didn't say no. Anyway, but thank you all very much for coming. I appreciate it. If you have ideas of topics for future IT matters, security matters, we always want to hear from you all on topics. One of the hardest things that we do each year when we put this together is to come up with what the topics are that we think you'll be interested in. I was very happy with our speakers for this year. I think they were timely topics, timely issues. Presenters did a good job, and excited to hear the questions and the follow-up that happens afterwards from folks as well. But if you have an idea, please share that with us. Same thing for Security Matters. Hope to see you in April at Security Matters. If there's ever anything that we can do, please let us know. We're happy to help. Thank you for coming, and be careful driving home. Thank you all. Bye.